What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Tuesday show, gang. Big 11-game slate for us to break down today. Hopefully everybody's having a good Tuesday out there. Get the week started off right. Anybody hit anything good last night? Wasn't the best night, kind of like came down in the middle of things yesterday, nothing crazy. Got shut down with the Astros that I had in my lineup. Hogan Harris ended up having a pretty good game against the Astros last night that did not go well. We had Coors Field go off a little bit. What else happened yesterday? It's an interesting one. Good slate, but I think we've got a really good one today. Lot to work with in terms of bats today on the across the board. There's a number of good-looking hitting spots. Lot to dig through with 11 games, though, starting up at 3:15, coming up on 3:20 already, actually. Apologies for the late start there. Figure we'll just kind of dive on in. Say hi to Cujo. Say hi to Andy Melman. Pink hand wave to you too, buddy. Lone Wolf's here. Bunch of other people piling into the chat as things get started. Say hello as you come on in the door. Hit the like button right when we get started. Hit the subscribe if you've never subscribed before. Check out our guys over at acemind.io for sims and optimizers. Gonna have football on top of us before you know it. Preseason's gonna be starting up, what are we, 2 weeks out from preseason? 3? It's the 23rd of July. What's the first preseason game? Holy shit, not even. We're like a week out from the first preseason game. Thursday, August 1st, Texans Bears. That is literally where's my calendar working? Cool. That's next Thursday. NFL is going to be here so quickly. And the point of that is you're going to need good optimizer tools, good sim tools, good projections, obviously, coming from rotoscouts. Put those two things together. It's a powerful, powerful tool. acemind.io. Check them out. You get 3 days off the top from them as a trial period. And then if you use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month. Kiefer Easterland is here. Thank you for attending the show, Kiefer, and hanging out and chatting with us. Hashtag bear down, says Kenneth Woodhouse. Dimitri's here. Colin Sutherland's here. Royals Onslaught. There you go. Stephen Leibowitz is on time. Nice. Appreciate the likes and the retweets on Twitter when these things go up, too. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle for those. The @digitalb21 is just like me. I never really post anything on there other than retweeting things that mostly come from the Rotoscouts Twitter handle. But if you want to follow me, if I ever start doing engagement and stuff, it'll be there. And then Rotoscouts is more just the site and the announcements. But hit likes, hit retweets when those pop up in front of you. It does help, spread the word just a little bit. And Steven did that for me right after I sent it. I think you retweeted that before I retweeted it from the Digital B21 account, buddy. So I appreciate that. Always nice to see those little, just a handful of likes. Makes you feel good. Makes the algo feel good. Handful of retweets puts it in front of a few new eyeballs, so we make new friends in chat and we get other people here hanging out. But anyway, let's jump into this thing. Again, a lot to talk about. Whoops. That's not where we want to be. Let me move this over, actually. Just make it a little bit easier to reach. Top of the board, Mets of the Yankees. Another Subway Series in town. A little bit of weather in the area in this one. It's just kind of a rainy day here in the New York area. It was raining early this morning. It's been mostly just like one of those like gray-green, cloudy, humid. You can feel the weather kind of a days, but it doesn't seem like it's actually going to crack for a big storm. Doesn't seem like Roth is all that concerned. He's got a green-yellow. Seems like he's pretty confident it's going to play. 9-run total in that one. Yanks pulling down a 5.04 against Jose Quintana, but it's a really, really limited version of the Yankees lineup. Not sure I fully buy in outside of it just being Yankees in Yankee Stadium, the Judge, the Soto of it, and so on. But it's a really limited version of their lineup. And then on the other side, just a 4.07 implied total for the Mets against Luis Gil, who has maybe righted the ship over his last 2 starts. He had a good one against Boston, good one against the Orioles. But as we've discussed through the season, he was very much pitching over his head talent-wise at the start of the season. So lot to be concerned about there against a pretty good Mets squad. Mets might be a little under. The Yanks might be a little bit too high in that one. Second game up, the Rays at the Blue Jays, 8.5 run total in that one. We've got a 3.98, 3.99 total for the Rays. They're going up against Jose Barrios. And then it's Sean Armstrong opening and Tyler Alexander following for the Rays. I had to correct the projection to Sean Armstrong. I didn't catch that he was just an opener this morning. I should have known that out of the gate. Hasn't thrown more than 2 innings all season, but accidentally had it up with a 3.5, I think, inning projection on it, or four inning projection on it. Initially, and I corrected that just before. So we've got an inning on him, and then I think I gave 4 to Alexander as the follower. It doesn't look like either one of them is going to be at all relevant for DFS purposes. That one, maybe you get to some bats on the Blue Jays side, but they've been a little bit difficult to trust, a little bit difficult to succeed with throughout the year. But a 4.61 implied total, not a bad total there. Chris Sale really looking to shut down the Reds. Reds pulling just a 3.06 implied total against. He's obviously been dominant through most of the season. And then we've got Nick Martinez, probably another guy going to give you, maybe 3.5, 4 innings in that one, going up against the Braves. 4.54 implied total for Atlanta. Definitely looks like a spot where you could consider some bats, but it is a depleted Braves lineup as well. The Phils, the Twins, 4.39 implied total on the Philly side, showing some power again. Simeon Wood Richardson on the mound for Minnesota. And coming back the other way, it is Zach Wheeler going for the Phils, checking the Twins down to just 3.71 implied runs. Looks like a pretty strong spot for pitching there. And Wood Richardson, not a bad pitcher. He's had some successful DFS days at fair prices. He's had some successful real-life days that weren't quite great DFS days. Good enough that he could beat this Phillies team, but I'm leaning more towards Phillies bats again. They've been one of our more go-to stacks of late. A lot of really good players in there with some power, with a lot of upside. So we'll take a hard look at the Phils, and probably a lot more so than Woods Richardson himself. Does that one have weather? Yeah, that one's also got weather in the area. Roth has that one also green-yellow. Saying, maybe a little bit of rain, maybe not, but should be able to get around it no matter what. Confident it'll play. Maybe a delay or a late start, and then play a full game after that. The Cincy and Atlanta game also, that one he's got as a strong yellow. That one does look like one of those, as he puts it, typical Atlanta days. A lot of weather in the area. Depends whether a storm hits kind of directly on where the stadium is. But that's definitely one to watch, especially with Chris Sale being such a hot commodity at the top of the pitching board. This next game up, the Brewers at the Cubs. Also some weather in the Wrigley area. This is another one that's hard yellow on Ross board. Basically, it sounds the same as Atlanta. Just kind of depends on whether the storms align with the ballpark. Right now, it doesn't look like they do, so they probably play clean. But if you get a little bit of shifting in the radar's off by however that works. Don't want to play weatherman. Check out Twisters, by the way. Got to go back to our promos. But that one in Atlanta definitely look like the sketchy weather spots. So Cubs are one to keep an eye on. Braves is one to keep an eye on weather-wise. 8.5 run total there, 4.26 on the Brewers side. Kind of like the looks of them. They're going up against Jameson Taillon, who has had some pretty strong starts this season, but is ultimately a somewhat gettable pitcher in a lot of ways. And then the Cubs pulling a 4.33 implied total back the other way against Colin Ray, who, as you guys know, is definitely one of our target pitchers. Had a decent one the last time out against the Nats. Blew up the start before that against the Pirates. He's an off and on kind of a pitcher, but he's definitely targetable. So we'll consider some bats on both sides in that one, and I think that's really the only consideration there outside in Wrigley, assuming we get a full game. White Sox, low end, 3.59 implied total for them. They're going up against John Gray, who has been super hittable this season. Doesn't really have very high strikeout numbers at all throughout the season. Strikeout high of 9. That came in his third start of the year. And then 3-7 strikeout games through May 10th. And then since May 10th, he hasn't struck out more than 4. He only did that twice. He hasn't struck out more than 3. Hasn't struck out more than 2 since June 27th. It's been really, really limited. Not that it really leads me to White Sox bats, especially not with that kind of a total, and maybe you get a good day from John Gray, but I question what the upside really looks like at this point with a pitcher that I used to think was a fair mid-range option on a lot of slates. Coming back the other side, 3.99 implied total for Texas. They're going up against Garrett Crochet. Only question there is, what do the innings look like? Last time out, he only went 2 innings. He faced 6 hitters. He struck out 4 of them, didn't give anything up, and then he was out of the game. 4 innings to start before that. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, 2 earned on 5 hits. They are on the record that he is going to be protected because they are desperately looking to trade him ahead of next week's deadline. That said, do acquiring teams necessarily want him to be coming off of 2 inning starts in a row, and then that arm starts to wind down and you mess with him a little bit? I don't know. So maybe they're going to look to showcase him a little bit here, give him a full-on start, and we'll be fine. That's how we've got it projected. That's how it looks like the industry's got it projected, but there is definitely a wrinkle on Garrett Crochet there. 3.99 implied total, though, for Texas does pretty much reflect that he's going to be making a full start. Diamondbacks at the Royals, a 9.5 run total there, second highest on the board behind Coors Field at 11, but there are a couple other 9s to work with on the board at a high 8.5 run total, but this one looks really good. I like the looks of the Diamondbacks on their side. They're going up against Alec Marsh for the Royals. They're pulling down 4.92 implied total, and then Kansas City also looking pretty good. They're going to be facing Jordan Montgomery, or the ghost of Jordan Montgomery at this point, pulling a 4.69 implied total there. Team that we like to get to a lot. That's an interesting one if you're into game stacking, to maybe consider those 2 teams, not the worst options to fit together in the world. So it's an interesting looking spot there. We got Bobby Witt, and somebody mentioned, the Royals going off, and most specifically Bobby Witt went off. And I was happy about the fact that I mentioned Bobby Witt's name approximately 47 different times on yesterday's show, because I kept using him as the example of like the super high-end shortstop that was available on the slate. So hopefully some folks out there got to him. I ended up not going with Royals in the lineup that I built, but regretted that pretty quickly. But hopefully some of you guys got there. He's just obviously tremendous, and he's on a ridiculous tear right now after the All-Star break. So I like both sides in that one. Obviously, the Red Sox are definitely a very big option today. 6.08 implied total against Ty Black at Coors Field. They've got Cooper Criswell on the mound going the other way. He's given a 5.05 implied total to the Rockies. Definitely in consideration today. We've talked about the Rockies a lot as far as being the under-owned team at Coors Field every time they're at home. And they do have some interesting bats in that lineup. There's a lot of sneaky power. It's just the frequency of zeros that even some of those power bats put into your lineup. They're not the most consistent guys in the world. But as a dart throw that is going to have value and will probably be under-owned for that run total and for that ballpark and pitching matchup, Rocks are definitely in consideration. Astros and the A's. Jake Bloss, Osvaldo Bido. Obviously, 2 super high-end pitchers. Definitely looks targetable on both sides for bats. I don't really think we're dealing with too much on the mound. Bloss has made 2 starts, 3 2/3, gave up 2 runs, 4 innings, gave up 2 runs. 1 was against Baltimore, 1 was against Miami. Maybe we get 5 out of him, and we'll see where the price is. I don't have the price off the top of my head, but a 4.27 implied total for a frisky enough A's team with a very interesting Brent Rooker, an interesting Lawrence Butler, Langoliers and all his power, and a few other semi-interesting bats in that lineup. And then on the other side, the Astros pulling a 4.83 implied total against Bido. Seems like a gettable spot. Bido hasn't given up all that much in terms of power. He hasn't given up a home run yet this year in his 18 1/3 innings. That's a 1 start and a handful of relief appearances. Hasn't made a start since May, but worked multiple innings in relief through June and into early July. Pitched an inning on the 19th. That was 4 days ago. So we're probably looking at 4 and change out of Bido, and he's very gettable on the Astros side of things. Angels, Mariners, another interesting spot here later in the slate. Logan Gilbert going for the M's is looking pretty solid against a super targetable Angel squad. We just saw Bryce Miller chew this team up last night, and I think Logan Gilbert come out and do exactly the same thing. The Vegas total definitely reflects that. 3.09 on the Angel side, and then a 3.99 coming back the other way. Jose Soriano looking like one of the more interesting value pitchers of the day. Some strikeout upside that's going to be fed both by his talent and by that Mariners lineup. Just a 7-run total for the game. 3.99 obviously favors the Mariners. His last start was against this team. He had a pretty good DFS day. 5 strikeouts, but 4 walks, but only 1 earned on 5 hits. Went 6 innings, booked the quality start and the win. So an effective DFS start for your money. He had a rougher one against the same Seattle team in Seattle a few starts before that, back at the end of May. But by and large, he's had some serviceable numbers through the year. He does have some strikeout stuff, and they're going to feed some strikeouts to him. So very interested in that spot. And then to round things out at the end of the night, we've got Landon Knack pushing some home run upside toward the Giants. He's been pretty gettable for power this season. Some Giants showing some pretty big numbers there. They've got Jordan Hicks on the mound going the other way against the Dodgers. Not my favorite target in the world. He's not giving you a ton of depth through the season. Has yet to complete has not completed 6 innings since the end of April. Let's put it that way. So probably not going to Hicks against the Dodgers here. 4.88 implied total for Los Angeles. Maybe not the most appealing day to go to their bats either, though. But we'll take a look through the full slate. Dive in on some of the pitchers. These guys are in yellow because that's your opener-follower situation. Armstrong going to open for about an inning. We're not considering him for your 4,000. Even there, you're very, very limited in terms of potential scoring. And then Alexander, I just don't see it. Given probably 4 innings of bulk relief work for the money. If he was priced maybe at 4,000, you could possibly argue it. But 71.64, I think just kind of wipes it out in terms of the quality of the play, and then you get a low strikeout opponent in the Blue Jays anyway, so it's not a super targetable. It's not like he's facing the White Sox, the A's, the Mariners, one of those teams. So I don't think that one's all that appealing. Beto I'm not into, and I think that's going to be a fairly short start at 6,000 at the bottom of the board. Tie block against the highly, highly implied total Red Sox, looking pretty strong on their end, even though he's a lefty. Don't really care. 6,500, 5,300. I greatly favor the Boston Bats down at the bottom. So I think we've got a pretty firm negative impact down here in these green bargain bin types. But then you get to some at least debatable spots going up the board from here. We'll get to the more obvious guys up top. We'll go in reverse order today. Jordan Montgomery's just been bad throughout the entire season, so he's not projecting well at this point. The back-end projections have been updated to the point where it's just reflecting a pretty mediocre pitcher. So even his past history is really not helping him out that much because he was never all that great of a DFS pitcher. He was a medium-strength DFS pitcher, pretty good real-life pitcher, and all of that has kind of gone away. Now he's just cheap. He's facing a really good Royals lineup that I'd much rather take shots with them, and we just saw the implied total that they're pulling. But somewhere lurking in there is, the memory of this guy being a decent pitcher. So for the money, I'm still somewhat drawn to that idea, but he really doesn't pull it projection-wise. There's not a lot of justification outside of just matching name to price. Name and obviously pitcher history to price. But current form, we're way off the mark, and it's not a good opponent. Quintana is kind of interesting. He has the ability to go 7 innings. He went 7 in 2 consecutive starts on the 4th and on the 9th. Both were against the Nats. Came back with 5 2/3, but gave up 5 earned runs while striking out 8. It's a weird start against the Rockies. His last one, the 14th. 5 2/3. Like I said, 8 strikeouts, but 5 earned runs on 6 hits. 4 of them were home runs. Yielded 1 walk. That was an ugly one. If he does that to the Yankees today, he's obviously going to get just completely annihilated. Not a good ballpark for that kind of a start. But the starts before that against Washington were both 7 inning starts, 5 hits total across the 14 innings, no runs. One game was 1 strikeout, 3 walks with 4 hits. The other was 5 strikeouts, a walk, and 1 hit. Pitched into the 7th against the Cubs a few starts before that and went 6th the start before that one. Against the Pods, gave up just 1 earned run across the 12 1/3 innings against those 2 teams. But then had a short start, 4 innings. I don't know if that got rained on or what. Maybe it was just inefficient because he struck out 7, walked 3, gave up 2 earned on 6 hits, but only went 4, faced 21 hitters against Houston at the end of June. Point being, I think that Quintana, for a medium level price down here, it's not a good fit here price-wise at 87. He might be able to give you enough to say that he's maybe a little under-projected there and could give you enough of a ceiling to get into play around some of these guys. He's still a little bit more expensive, but there's not a ton of daylight from his nearly 11 to, this 13 right here. And he is facing a somewhat gettable version of the Yankees. We'll see that lineup in just a second. Cooper Criswell is a lot harder to have faith in Coors Field, so that we're back to kind of a no on the bargain bin pricing on Criswell. Hicks, again, difficult to envision more than just 5 mediocre innings against the Dodgers, so kind of off the board in the mid-7s. Marsh is giving up a big total on the other side to the Diamondbacks, and they're a very effective lineup that's maybe getting more interesting if Corbin Carroll continues to play well. 7,800, 7,500 is a fair price, but he's really not earned much faith. Jake Bloss, I do think maybe you get away with as a value dart throw at 67.72 against the targetable Oakland squad. Not the worst idea in the world, but not a high-end option either. He does project out okay, higher on FanDuel and on DraftKings. Woods Richardson, at 62, I think he's a viable dart throw on DraftKings. At 82, it's more of a stretch on FanDuel. I'd just much rather have Jose Soriano, even if he's more highly owned, against Seattle for 81 than targeting the Phillies with a medium caliber pitcher for 82. Doesn't really track for me. At 6,200 on DraftKings, that makes a ton more sense. That is a good value dart to throw. And again, he's good enough to beat that team. He's not a high-end strikeout pitcher. He's not a monster in terms of putting up a huge ceiling on top of that projection, but you don't need a huge ceiling on top of that for that kind of money. Can he get you to 20 for that 6,200 on the right day? I don't think that's out of the question. Taillon, don't really love, and especially 92.83 doesn't really add up against a really good Brewer squad to me. I don't think that he's misprojected here. I think, that's a fair median projection. I think that's fair to expect somewhere around those numbers. Maybe a little bit of upside if he has a good day, but I don't think there's much hope of running off and winning the slate with Taillon priced like that. Colin Ray, it's kind of the same thing, 8,400 on FanDuel anyway. Just really low faith. Every now and then he snaps off a good DFS start, finds some strikeouts, but it's pretty low faith. You're just kind of operating on the idea of maybe he has one of those decent strikeout days. Cubs lineup hasn't been great of late. 7,400, I could see it a little bit more as an SP2, keep him in that value bucket and rotate him around with some other shares of other guys. Maybe you can get there. What's the deal with Nick Martinez? I gotta see what's am I giving Nick Martinez too much? I should probably pull Nick Martinez back a little bit. This projection's going to come down. I think he's too high. Got to remember to do that. He hasn't thrown more than 40 pitches since the end of May when he was last making full starts. Went 5 innings, 4 2/3, 4 1/3 in 3 starts. Only one of those was actually a full start. The other 2 were bulk relief appearances. That was through the end of May. Earlier in the year, he made 4 full starts through April. Went 5 innings a couple times, 6 innings. But I feel like we're getting 3-4 max, and that might be a 4.5. And even then, it feels a little high. I think we're off that play at 66 against the Braves. It'll probably come down and land more in maybe this territory. So I guess maybe price-wise it does still play a little bit on DraftKings. FanDuel, you're just not getting enough juice to get to the quality start. I question whether you have enough to get to the win. But on DraftKings at 66, I guess he does compare a little bit more favorably to the other playable dart throws. Because that Braves lineup is pretty targetable now. There are enough strikeouts available in it. And they've been underperforming, and now they're a little bit more banged up. Knack, again, showing enough to justify a little bit of share at 76, 8,000. The price isn't bad, and he is a talented enough pitcher. We talked about him yesterday. He is somebody that EMAC took in the dynasty draft to fill out his dynasty roster at the end of the draft, and seems like a somewhat talented kid. It's just right now he's pushing a lot of home runs. I think it's a 5+% home run rate, and San Francisco showing a good amount of power against. So it might just be a day where even if he has an okay day, he gives up, say, a pair of home runs that do just enough damage to make him not a great DFS option at those prices. But I think you can roll with that a few times. That's at worst cooked into those prices. Then we get into some at least higher end options depending on what you think of some of these guys. So Jose Barrios against Tampa. I think that's a targetable Tampa team. They haven't been nearly as good as they've been in the past couple of seasons. That said, it does seem like they're coming together a little bit. Some of that might have just been Yankee Stadium over the weekend, but they've had some good games recently, and some of their key hitters are coming around somewhat. Jose Barrios is a decidedly average pitcher, maybe a tick above league average. 9,400, 8,100. I like the price quite a bit better on DraftKings than on FanDuel. But on FanDuel, that is a reasonable-ish kind of a price for the way that this slate is shaped, because it puts him in competition with like Jamison Tyone. I like him better than Tyone. Luis Gil for 400 more. I probably prefer Barrios a little bit more, or I'm just going for better value. So compared to the very top of the board with all those guys in the 10s and all the way up to 11 for sale, it does play at 94, even though I don't think all that much of Barrios. I think he's right around where he should be. Luis Gil, again, was largely pitching over his head talent-wise earlier in the season. Had a couple bumpy ones, then came back with 2 good ones against 2 tough teams, facing another good team tonight. Middle of the road kind of projection for that money, 9,800, 9,000. Definitely, again, a better price on the DraftKings slate. John Gray, a little bit of faith here with that, leaving him at 75, 7,000. The lack of strikeouts this year is very, very concerning, but John Gray could go out and give you just 7 clean innings with just 3 strikeouts, get both bonuses, and check out. For 75, 7,000, I do think there's value in even that kind of a start. And on the right day, he does have the ability to find 5 or 6 strikeouts still for you against that team. So he's on the board. I like Jose Soriano a little bit better against a super targetable Seattle team with all those strikeouts and all that terribleness in that lineup. 81-76, definitely appealing for Soriano and a pitcher of his talent. Garrett Crochet, again, just limited by the potential for a very, very short start. I don't think it's going to happen. I also don't think you're getting 7. 6 max. Maybe he closes out the 6 for you. You're probably, if you want to be ultra safe about the slate, you should probably consider that he's a 5-inning start today. So figure out what that impact is for you on FanDuel. It is definitely in the projection a little bit here. So for the money, he's probably the lower end of those 4 starters, but he probably also has an unrivaled strikeout upside, or maybe it's just, him, Chris Sale, 1-2 strikeout wise. So if he gives you 5, you could still come away with 8 Ks and 5 clean innings. Love Gilbert against the Angels, 10-8, 10,000. No problem paying those salaries on either site. Zach Wheeler, just a tough opponent in Minnesota, but they're a little bit diminished right now. 10-6, 9,500 for Wheeler. Looks like a very strong option. And then Sale running away with the lead projection at 11-2 and 10-5. Makes a ton of sense against a super targetable for strikeouts Reds team that is definitely a little bit dangerous, but I think Sale overcomes any of that and has a very big day. Jake Swales wants to pay up at both pitching spots and run a Rays 5-man. Interesting. I do think that paying up at both pitching spots is a interesting and viable strategy today. It's just I do have a very strong blinking light here in the bargain bin saying pick me, pick me. And there's a couple other viable-ish kind of options. Like I do think Gray's viable at 7,000 on DK. And then you're dealing with more like 8s and 9s. So yeah, at that point, I'd probably rather spend up if you're not going to one of these 2 values, which might be the way that most people are handling it. Let me see what the ownership on those guys is. Curious now. And then we'll get into our game by game. Only 11 of them to go through. Yowza. Soriano, second most popular pitcher on DK. Per these guys' projections. Man. The Soriano-Chris Sale combo is going to be super popular today. So what I would say to that is if you're going to use Soriano, maybe you go to one of these guys. And if you're going to use Chris Sale, maybe you go to John Gray. Just to break up the commonality of those combinations. Not that Gray, Wheeler, and Gilbert and Crochet are going to be under-owned. Those are the next 4 most owned pitchers. But they're much lower owned, at least Gray, Wheeler, and Crochet, per these projections, much lower owned than the other 3, and most particularly than Sale and Soriano. Which I think jibes. It makes total sense that people will be drawn to that value and drawn to that top end. So if you shake things up by just going to go to a Wheeler Soriano, Wheeler Gray is even lower owned and totally viable. I don't think you're making a mistake though, just paying up, doing the double pay up, and honestly, that creates shakeup as well because if you think about it, yes, Chris Sale will be extremely popular on his own. Logan Gilbert will be extremely popular on his own, but most of those pairings are gonna be Chris Sale, Jose Soriano, Chris Sale, John Gray, Logan Gilbert, Jose Soriano, Logan Gilbert, John Gray, and maybe some sprinkling of some of these other things. The number of people that put, and it's probably not Sale Gilbert, but whatever you break it down to, that put expensive together with those options, probably a lot fewer. So you're already drawn into a smaller pool while still having Chris Sale, right? So if you use Chris Sale in the smaller pool of Chris Sale shares. And that's automatically, since you're spending X on your pitching share at a big number while everybody else is spending Y and trying to save money at pitcher, you're immediately, as you pointed out, drawn to completely differentiated bats. So just making that one different decision, even using the chalkiest pitchers of the day, you're already off and running to just very, very different combinations of lineups. And anything with as far as popularity just taken care of. So, yeah, totally viable and makes some sense. Yeah, I do think, honestly, that Tampa lineup, they were very much underperforming some of their good players. And they're tricky because last year they had a lot of mediocre players that dramatically overperformed. So I was expecting them to come down, but a lot of it's come down around the wrong guys like Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, and we'll get into that in just a second. So with those guys maybe finding their stride a little bit, I do think it's a more interesting lineup. But to start things off, Mets and the Yanks. Let's see, we got the Mets in. Doesn't look like. Typical lazy, good-for-nothing Mets. Nope. I knew it. There's no Mets in here. Brewster's Millions, anyone? Great movie. I'm sure I've talked about it before. Luis Gil on the mound, 9,000 on DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel, 3.17 ERA, but a glaring 4.06 xFIP. Not that this is tragic or even bad, but it's decidedly average, and it's revealing about this number. Stuff Plus still likes the arsenal. He does have good stuff, but he walks 11.7% this year. He only has a 27.2% CSW despite an 11.6% swinging strike rate. Does have a 28.2% strikeout rate. Has been a good strikeout pitcher, but giving up an 8.9% barrel rate on a fly ball trajectory in Yankee Stadium with nearly 90 miles an hour of exit velo should be leading to more home run upside than this. Just in a lot of ways has gotten lucky to be as good as he was through that first, 15, 18 starts of the season? 15 to, call it 15 because we're up to 19 now. The last time out, as mentioned, faced Baltimore. At Baltimore, 6 innings, 7 Ks, a walk, gave up 1 earned on 5 hits. Start before that was 6 2/3 at home against Boston. Faced 23 hitters, 9 strikeouts, gave up a homer, but that was it on 4 hits. Melted down in the 2 starts before those, though. 4 earned runs on 2 hits, 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, including a homer. 4 innings, 19 hitters faced. Lost the game to Cincinnati. Lost to the Mets in a road start in Queens. 4 1/3, 5 earned runs, 2 strikeouts, 4 walks, home run allowed, 4 hits. And then a complete disaster on the 20th, went just an inning and a third against the Orioles, gave up 7 earned on 8 hits in that start. 1 strikeout, 2 walks. So obviously hit a major divot along the way, but maybe has righted things a little bit. If you're a believer in the Yankees broadcast where they talk about his pitch mix and everything, there were some issues with that. So maybe he's found whatever form was working for him earlier in the season. But this is not a pitcher I wholeheartedly believe in. I like him projected right around the middle where he is. So no issues with him from here, considering that, other than how he's priced. I don't love him at price. But I do think he's got a little bit of upside just because we've seen it a number of times this year, and you're chasing the strikeouts. As long as he manages the walks or at least punches his way out of trouble after he gives up walks, you could be okay. But there are better options for your money. Quintana on the other side, very average, 4.13 ERA, but a 4.40 xFIP, an 82 rating by Stuff Plus is not good, giving up nearly 43% hard hits, nearly 90 miles an hour of exit velo. Nearly 4% home runs, just striking out 18.1%. There's not a ton of appeal here, but like I said, does have that ability to break off a 7-inning start with clean innings and even find a few strikeouts along the way on the right day. Veteran guy with upside, going up against a Yankees lineup that has Jahmai Jones in the leadoff spot. J.D. Davis hitting cleanup. He is good against lefties historically, but he's been pretty bad all season this year. Anthony Volpe struggling, Gleyber Torres struggling, Alex Verdugo terrible, Carlos Narvaez It has one plate appearance this season. Was he a rookie? I know they just called him up from AAA to fill in for Trevino, but had he ever had... Nope, that was it. He's got one plate appearance in the show. 25 years old. In AAA, he was all right this season. But you're talking about a tertiary backup catcher at this point. And then DJ LeMahieu, who died sometime before spring training and was replaced by this animatronic version that can't hit a baseball. So it's not a good Yankees lineup. I really don't have that many issues with the idea that Jose Quintana is at least a playable dart throw at 7,900 on DraftKings. It's just that that's not the perfect kind of a price. From down here especially, you'd rather have him somewhere in these low sevens, in the green territory, even better. But he is on the board. Would not shock me if Jose Quintana had a serviceable day against the Yanks. That doesn't make me think that 8,700 on FanDuel is at all the right price, by the way. Taking a look at the Mets lineup, starting up top there. Always an interesting spot to start. Francisco Lindor up to 19 home runs and 20 stolen bases. We're the people who didn't believe that he had a crack at 30-30 this year. Think we're well on our way. 208 ISO, a 129 WRC plus from the top of the lineup. 13.7% barrels with a 46.3% hard hit rate on the season. Just strikes out 16.4% of the time. 55.39 across sites, appropriately, star caliber pricing on FanDuel, a little bit cheap on DraftKings. 53.36 for Nimmo. Lefty with that kind of bat in Yankee Stadium, tremendous option against this pitcher. 12% barrels, 50.6% hard hits, 16 homers, a 197 ISO, tremendous ability to get on base. Nimmo's a terrific option today. JD Martinez with all of his power, 4,800, 3,100, 10 home runs, a 182 ISO on the season, but making killer contact with a 15.6% barrel. Long history of hitting bombs against the Yankees, long history of hitting bombs against everybody, like JD Martinez for a fair price in the middle of the lineup. Pete Alonso, 5,300, 3,300, 19 homers on the season, a 207 ISO, creating runs 20% better than average, making very good contact. Who was the comp that I just saw earlier? Somebody put out an amusing baseball reference comp. I forget who the hell the other side of it was, though. Some mediocre ex-Mets first baseman. Pretty funny. Alonso was just leading in the home run category for their careers. Did I like that? Let me see. Probably not. Nope. It's out there somewhere in the world. But still always like Alonso. And honestly, 53-33 for his home run upside alone in this ballpark against this pitcher is a pretty fair price. Mark Vientos is still just 4,500 on DraftKings, 31 on FanDuel, still making fantastic contact, has 12 home runs in 211 plate appearances, a very strong triple slash, 152 WRC plus with a 245 ISO. Dude can absolutely mash, and he does not cost anything at third base on DK, either corner infield spot on FanDuel. DJ Stewart has not been good in a long while. 180 plate appearances, he's at 181, 339, 313. You're just buying a really cheap lefty bat here. Francisco Alvarez has tons of power at the catcher spot. 4,600 is a fair price for him on DK. He's playable at 28 on FanDuel in the util spot alongside Pete Alonso. 4 home runs on the season, but pretty strong slash line, over 172 plate appearances, getting on base and helping create runs at a pretty good clip. An improvement in a lot of ways over what he was last year, which was just a power hitter. So there's a lot of quality at catcher there. A surging Jeff McNeil, he's up to 8 home runs and 5 stolen bases, a 123 ISO, and 80 WRC plus. He is still mostly just a contact hitter. He's still entirely just a contact hitter, but he has popped a few into the seats over the last few days, so we'll give him credit for that. He is playing a lefty playing in Yankee Stadium. A lazy fly ball to right field by Jeff McNeil could definitely get into the seats in Yankee Stadium, so I'll at least put him on the board. He's cheap at second base or in the outfield. Jose Iglesias, a mix and match play. He's had a great 100 plate appearances. I'd like to see him try and replicate that over the next 100 plate appearances. I'll give him credit if he does. On the Yankees side, again, it is just a really hamstrung version of this Yankees lineup until a few days out, hopefully, from getting Giancarlo Stanton back. Supposedly, they're going to be big buyers at the trade deadline. But this is ugly. Jahmai Jones over 44 plate appearances, slashing 256, 326, 410. Apparently the best option we've got in the leadoff role. He was supposed to be the 26th man on the roster as a backup utility guy. And I mean backup like behind Ozzie Cabrera level utility guy. Now he's leading off. 42.3% hard hits in the teeny tiny sample. We don't have a ton of track record with Jahmai Jones. He is very cheap for a guy hitting in front of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. So to just buy some very cheap correlated scoring, he's an option. 61.44 for Soto, 65.48 for Judge. If it wasn't for these two guys, I don't know that the Yankees would score any runs at all. 25 homers for Soto, 35 for Judge, 311, 435, 594, 310, 435, 676. A 190 and a 207 WRC plus. Literally the entire offense in those two players. J.D. Davis does mash lefties historically. This season we're at a 9% barrel rate, 45% hard hits over 150 opportunities, but it's amounted to just a 125 ISO and 4 home runs. Pretty limited output for power, but the contact is there. He is a powerful right-handed bat. He has a long history of making elite-level contact and just seeing mediocre results for it. Had an okay season in San Fran last year. Hit 18 home runs over 546 opportunities, but was not great overall. That's just kind of who J.D. Davis is. It is kind of a revenge game for J.D. Davis, but he's faced this Mets team since being on it. Volpe's just not all that good. 251, 305, 380, and 96 WRC plus, 7 homers, 17 stolen bases. Mix and match part for a cheap price at shortstop, but there are better shortstops available. Glaber's having a bad year. 3,500, 2,700. 8 home runs and 4 steals, a 113 ISO, 12 points below average for run creation, and making bad contact to boot. 34.5% hard hits, 6.1% barrels. Ouch. Verdugo has never really made great contact, but was having a productive year earlier in the season. He was putting the ball in play. He was hitting up here. These guys were getting on base, and he was knocking them in. And it's just all kind of evaporated. Now we're down to 229, 286, 367 over 409 plate appearances. 10 homers, most of which he hit early in the season. There's not much to work with there, but unfortunately, he is one of the more playable Yankees today. Carlos Narvaez, again, we're one plate appearance into the major league career so far. I guess he's 1 for 1. Yeah, he singled in his lone start. In 308 plate appearances in AAA this season, he's at 269, 386, 443, drawing a 14.6% walk rate against the 25.3% strikeout and creating runs 18% better than average. 9 homers and 8 steals. Last year, he hit 10 homers and stole 5 bags in 359 opportunities. Got on base at a similarly high clip, but was below average for run creation, didn't hit the ball as hard. So maybe a little bit of upside. He doesn't seem inept for your dead mid price on either side at catcher. If you're stacking Yankees, you could probably do worse than including him, particularly on DraftKings, just as a free square at the catcher spot. And you just hope that you get something out of him, rising tide effect, or maybe he drives in some of these guys. Not a great option, but he's available. DJ LeMahieu, 28-23 across sites, over 146 plate appearances. He's just been completely lost at the plate. Dozen runs scored, dozen ribbies, 52 WRC plus. Sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base. 1 homer that he hit the other day. It's been really bad. This goes Mets bats, Yankees bats, Jose Quintana. Mets bats, Yankees bats, Luis Gil, Jose Quintana. You can even put Luis Gil above Yankees bats, actually. Call that a tie. Verdugo is trash, Lone Wolf. We'll just leave that up there. That'll be the motto for this show. Yeah, Gray is not giving you any reason to trust him at all this season. But we do have track record. He's been a good pitcher. But definitely problematic this year. The low strikeouts are the biggest part of the problem. Hasn't been completely reliable for keeping runs off the board either. But the way he's priced today against that opponent, I do think there's quite a bit of upside there. And if he's going to be lower owned than the other obvious upside value guy, draws the eye a little bit. Not that old, Larry. Now, somebody post move on, like more recent than that. 2000s, mid like 2000 teens even. Was only on the team for a few years. I can't remember who the hell it was. Maybe I can find it. It's going to bug me now. I just saw it earlier today, too. It's just one of those dumb baseball reference side by sides that doesn't even, like, a lot of times doesn't even include relevant stats. Such a waste of time looking for this. Welcome to this show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you haven't already. All right, I can't find it. I'm done looking for it. It is not worth it. Continuing on with this deal here. I'll give you a little banner to read. Continuing on, Sean Armstrong opening for the Rays, followed by Tyler Alexander. I don't think either one of these guys is on the board. Armstrong's going to give you an inning, maybe a little bit of a second inning before you go to Alexander. Neither one of them projects out all that well. Getting a little bit of offensive upside, not really in the home run department when we model against Armstrong, but definitely there's some little bit of projection upside and some low strikeout opponents, so that kind of erases any quality that you might have otherwise claimed out of these pitchers. So I just don't think we're looking at that side of the board. Jose Berrios at 8,100, 9,400, definitely more interested over here. 94, just an awkward fit price-wise. I think he's playable, and especially, like I said at the top of the show when we were talking about the pitching board, as compared to the super high-priced pitchers on the slate, he does fit in a little bit at that 9,400 for some shares, but it's not really appealing. He's not a high priority. He's very average. He's striking out just 17.8% of hitters. He's underperforming even being an average pitcher, which is what I've been saying about him all season. 4.01 ERA, but a 4.54 xFIP, a 7.9% swinging strike rate with a 26.8% CSW, giving up a 4.29% home run rate. He has not been good at all this season. We've had better years from him. 23.5% strikeout rate last year with a 3.65 and a 4.01. Year before, though, just 19.8% strikeout with a 5.23 and a 4.21. That looked a lot more like this season. So, really targetable enough pitcher. We were talking about the Rays bats in chat. We're seeing a little bit of home run upside, certainly around Isaac Paredes, Brandon Lau, Randy Rosarena. That trio of hitters, not a bad three-man option there. And then you've got talent through the rest of the lineup. Jose Citi down toward the bottom has power, tons of premium contact. Josh Lowe in the middle of the lineup, not a ton of plate appearances this year, but a lot of quality and putting up some counting stats already in the small sample. Richie Palacios gets involved from time to time, has a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. It's not a terrible Rays lineup to consider, and nobody in that lineup on DK priced above 4,400, nobody above 3,100 on FanDuel. Definitely one of the value stacks that does, map out kind of well. I think I would put them above Berrios in terms of which side I prefer. I think I'm more inclined to get to Rays bats than get to Berrios shares. We'll start there. 15 stolen bases on the season, over 272 plate appearances for Richie Palacios. He's getting on at a 347 clip. That's made him really relevant to this team. He's a lefty bat. He doesn't have a ton of premium contact, but he's knocked 5 home runs out of the park. Has the ability to drive the ball a little bit, but mostly there to get on base. Last year, he was much lower strikeout. How many plate appearances did he make last year? 102. He had 6 home runs and 102 chances last year. He only has 5 in 272 this year. Got on base at a lower clip. Was more put the ball in play focus last year. He's doubled his walk rate this year, but he's also doubled that strikeout rate. But I think you take that for getting on base at nearly 35% of the time. Obviously, a 107 WRC plus pays the bills. Paredes, been their best power hitter over the past couple of seasons. 16 home runs this year, 31 last year, I want to say. 353 on base to go with the power. 252, 353, 449. A 197 ISO, and he's created runs 32% better than average to lead the team so far. Pretty high-end bat from the right side. Has first and third base eligibility for a fair price on either site. Brandon Lau, a premium power bat at second base. Has 10 home runs in just 197 opportunities. A 233 ISO. 14.8% barrel with a 42.6% hard hit rate. Brandon Lau, maybe people forgot about how good this guy is in terms of hitting for power. If he falls by the wayside ownership wise, that's a great opportunity against a weak right-handed pitcher giving up a ton of home run upside. I like that spot. Arosarena up to 15 home runs and 14 stolen bases after a little bit of a surge, slashing 211, 313, 395. Obviously a long way to go to quality, but up to a 184 ISO. Now he's creating runs 7% above average, 10.2% barrels, 42.7% hard hits. Even this late in the season, it's amazing what a few hot days will do for you. Josh Lowe at 4,000, 2,800. 5 home runs, 9 steals. Just a 157 ISO, just an 87 WRC plus over his 168 opportunities, but a 12.7% barrel, 42.2% hard hit. Both those numbers are up over last season in this moderate sample. Has me interested. Last year in 501 chances, he hit 20 home runs, stole 32 bases, had a 208 ISO, again on weaker contact. Had a 131 WRC plus. That was a tremendous year. This is a talented player who is cheap at 2,800 and 44,000 in the outfield. Another lefty against a mediocre righty too. It's like 1 through 5, especially 2 through 5, is pretty tremendous from the Rays side. It's not even value wise. I just kind of downright like this spot with these bats, and the fact that you sprinkle value on top of it as a cherry. You don't really sprinkle cherries, though, do you? You sprinkle sprinkles. You just kind of plunk a cherry down there. Hold it by the stem and just kind of mash it into the whipped cream. Now I just want a sundae. Can we take an ice cream break? That'd be awesome. We just had like a 5-minute ice cream break in the middle of the show. I'd need like a whole crew out there just like making up like a little perfect sundae to bring in to me. Somebody like walks in here. Jose Caballero in the middle of the lineup there after Lowe, 36-29, middle infield option across sites. Very cheap option, 25 stolen bases on the season. He drove the ball a few times. It's not frequent that he really connects for any kind of power, but he has managed 7 home runs on the season. 97 WRC plus, not the most reliable guy, but doesn't have to be for that money. As a bolt-on part, if you just want to occupy shortstop with a weak option, you can use him. It's just positionally, like I don't necessarily want him at short. Maybe third is the right spot to put him because you could use Paredes at first. You don't want to block off your shares with Brandon Lau at second on FanDuel, and you don't necessarily want to go util with him. But then again, if you're occupying short or third instead of util, doesn't really make a difference. An interesting enough player. If you're building a bunch of Rays stacks, he's definitely in the mix for shares. Ben Rortvedt, not much of a hitter behind the plate. 3 home runs, 260, 356, 354. He has been getting on base over his 208 opportunities, so he's relevant for correlated scoring. If you need a cheap catcher, he's moderately playable, but there's not a ton of power there. Jose City does have 14 home runs over 306 plate appearances, a 204 ISO, one of the more interesting bats late in the lineup, 9 stolen bases on top of that. He's been a sneaky, quiet, mediocre asset for counting stats for several seasons now. Only cost $3,500, $3,000. I've got enough faith in him to roll out some shares and call him targetable down the lineup. Taylor Walls for 26-24. 98 plate appearances of mediocrity. Not really a strong option late in the lineup. But this group of hitters, and then +1, +2, +3, and then Ben Rortvedt is a cheap catcher. There's a lot to work with in this Rays lineup against a very targetable pitcher. On the other side, the Blue Jays look equally good. I think there's enough upside with them, and they're not all that expensive either. Highest priced player is Vladdy at $4,800 on DraftKings. Totally undeserved to have him priced down like that. He's hit 16 home runs. He's got a 180 ISO. The ISO's not as strong as it could be given the ridiculous premium contact that he makes, the fact that he only strikes out 16.1% of the time. But it is what it is. He's also created runs 38% better than average while getting on at a 362 clip. It's a tremendous option at first and third base for that price on DraftKings. At 36 on FanDuel, he's just priced like normal Vladdy Guerrero. That's not really a big discount. It's not really a super high price. It's about right. 48 on DraftKings, definitely a little cheap. Springer for 45-33 is up to 13 home runs and 9 stolen bases. Maybe a little bit of life. He's creating runs 3% better than average now. He's slashing 231, 312, 396. Hopefully pulling it together in a big second half is in the works. It's a player I do like. Maybe a shot at 20-20 for the season, even if the slash line doesn't come around. He's playable, and he's gotten very cheap these days. That said, I feel like that at least the FanDuel price has gone back up by a couple hundred. Maybe not DK. Spencer Harwood's really interesting at 4,200, 2,700 at second base. Slashing 310, 410, 460, a 151 WRC+. plus. He is just known as an on-base machine with a really good hit tool and the ability to provide a ton of correlated scoring, low strikeout rate, high walk rate. He's a good hitter. At those prices, he's definitely involved for correlated scoring. Probably a better option than Justin Turner these days. Turner getting on at a 328 clip, hit 5 home runs very early in the season. Hasn't done much since. 323 plate appearances down to a 95 WRC+. plus. Doesn't strike out that much, does draw walks, but I, again, just kind of prefer Horwitz at second base. Davis Schneider, second base and outfield eligible on both sides. Very cheap, 3,600, 2,500. Mediocre or hard hit rate, but a 13% barrel. 307 plate appearances, 10 home runs, just a 170 ISO, but a 103 WRC+. plus. He's been a little bit above average. I think for those prices, as long as he stays cheap, he remains playable. If he were to climb even to Spencer Harwood's level pricing on DraftKings, jump from 37 to 42, 36 to 42, it would be a little bit more, prefer Harwood's. But at that price, he's an easy mix and match piece with power. Varsho, just mediocre. 11 homers, 9 steals, 95 WRC+, plus a 199 ISO. Occasionally you get lefty pop out of him. Alejandro Kirk, Ernie Clement, Leo Jimenez to round things out. Clement has been pretty decent. Dead on league average for run creation over 208 opportunities, but 6 home runs, 4 stolen bases. 268 average, but a 286 on base is really hampering things. Striking out just at a 7.7% rate, though, 2.4% walk rate. At least he's putting the ball in play a ton. He's just not really driving it when he does. 4.3% barrels, 23.7% hard hits. If he could hit the ball a little bit harder, this would be utterly ideal in terms of putting the ball in play for DFS. Mix and match pieces at best at the bottom. Rays bats, Blue Jays bats. Mix and match play of Jose Barrios, neither pitcher from the Rays. Oh, let me turn that goddamn banner off, sorry. Forgot I turned that on. Duda, that's who it was. Larry nailed it. Lucas Duda. Ike Davis was another good guess, Todd Strong. Ben's calling and Jerry needs a break. The show would end at 6:59 if we had an ice cream break. True. Very, very true. Speaking of snacks, Nacho Alvarez Jr. back in the 2-hole for the Braves today. Premium kid, very high-end prospect. Only cost $2,200. They got him on the FanDuel slate. Still absent from DraftKings, as best I could tell. His real name is Ignacio Alvarez. If you watch Breaking Bad, you know that Nacho is a common nickname for Ignacios. So if he appears on DK, pop him in. Whatever price he's at, he is a reasonable option hitting second in that lineup behind Kelnick, ahead of Ozuna, Travis d'Arnaud, Matt Olson. But it is a diminished version of the Braves. There's no doubt about it at this point. Not only are a lot of them underperforming, but the lineup has gotten shorter and shorter as the season has gone on due to some key injuries. So, not that Nick Martinez, again, this projection is going to come down just on the idea that he's probably only going, 3.5, 4 innings here. 3 1/3, 3 2/3. So, yeah, Nacho is Ignacio Vargas. I think that was his name. I know it was Ignacio. I think Vargas was the last name. But yeah, Nick Martinez, I'm going to lower that projection on innings a little bit. I don't think he's overly viable at 6,600. A 3.88 ERA with a 3.98 xFIP, a very good walk rate at just 3%, 18.9% strikeouts, but some of that is at maximum effort out of the bullpen. I don't really like it. I would probably rather have Braves bats, but I don't think they're that strong a target. They're just kind of in the middle of the stacks board today. Drawing a little bit of power upside, but it's really only around Marcell Ozuna at 10.21. Everybody else is kind of in the mid-range. Olsen at 6.40, d'Arnaud at 5.49. Austin Riley's out with paternity leave for a few days, so he's not in the lineup. Ozzy Albies is obviously injured. Acuna's been gone for months now. So really limited down through this lineup, down toward scuffling Orlando Arcia, Zach Short, who's just not good at the bottom of the lineup. Eddie Rosario wasn't good enough to keep his job with the Nationals. Adam Duvall is sub Mendoza this year. there's reason to want to play Nick Martinez at these prices. Maybe he slides through even with a lowered projection. It's going to be 10-ish. And I don't think there's enough value there on DraftKings. I'm sure there's not on FanDuel. And Leo DeRocher. Oh, Drysdale was on the Munsters. I got you. I don't remember that. On the Brave side of things, Chris Sale on the mound, 10-5, 11-2, just easily and obviously the top pitcher on the board. The Reds checking in with a capable enough offense, but one that isn't as good against left-handed pitching most of the time. 24.7% strikeout rate overall for this team. We'll see what version of the lineup we get. Do we have it yet? We do. So I think Sale's just got major strikeout potential. 23.4% overall strikeout rate for this version of the lineup. That includes India up at the top of the lineup at 19.7. You get Tyler Stevenson, and they're very effective catcher at just 17.9% strikeouts in the heart of the lineup. And then at the bottom of the lineup, they're helped out a little bit by Santiago Espinal at 11.7%. Some of the key hitters through the middle of the lineup have tons and tons of strikeout downside or upside for Chris Sale. So I think it's a maybe even more targetable Reds lineup than it looks like. We're not breaking any new ground here. Everybody in the world wants to be playing Chris Sale in this spot. He's just very, very expensive. If you can figure out a way to get to him price-wise, you're dealing with a lot of popularity. He's probably going to be 30-40% owned across the board. So just know that you're dealing with commonality of construction, and make a couple differentiated decisions, whether that's pairing him with another expensive pitcher to automatically just create a different path than 80% of the field is going to be on that uses him. I think that's one really viable approach, or just picking a different value pitcher to pair him with than the most obvious two value pitchers would create a very different path than most other people. If you're going with the most common build, which would be Chris Sale and Jose Soriano, I think that's completely viable. I think it is the best pairing on the board. Just make a different decision with your bats. If, say, the Rays, who we just talked about, are under-owned, which I haven't looked at their ownership at all, go that way with some, with some bats and buy some value back, and then attack a high-end small stack. There's a lot of ways to differentiate a lineup and not have to worry about any single point of individual ownership for anybody at any position. Pitcher included. Almost pitcher most specifically. And it's just a matter of how you can manipulate those pairings, like what we were talking about with the ability to pair Sale Soriano, Sale Gray, or opt for one of the less popular expensive pitchers and one of those guys, or mix those pairings up just to create the different paths. Because again, a gigantic chunk of the field is going directly to Sale and Soriano together. So if you do that, just get on to different bats. So going down that Reds lineup, Jonathan India off the top, 4,300, 3,100, continuing to get on base very effectively, creating runs at a 123 clip. Very strong option at second base for the money. I do think he's a decidedly average player overall, but as long as he's just looking and just focused to be a correlated scoring option with the ability to provide the occasional counting stats, perfectly fine going to him for those prices at second base if you're stacking Reds. It's just a terrible spot to be stacking Reds outside of just being very, very contrarian and probably not for the right reasons. If you want to look at it as, am I targeting Chris Sale and a gigantic chunk of the field with bats from a good team? It's a yes, but it's a yes with an asterisk because of their strikeouts. Right? I think they're a good enough team, but they're vulnerable specifically to something that Chris Sale does exceptionally well. So I think it's a less appealing spot than a lower strikeout, decent quality team. Like even say if it was the Blue Jays on the other side. That would be maybe a more interesting team of somewhat similar talent levels with star caliber guys and mid-level caliber guys. They're just a lot lower strikeout. So there would be the idea of like, all right, maybe the Blue Jays get a few extra balls in play, some runs get scored, and it's an inefficient day. Sale gets rung up early, and then we get into the bullpen and score some more runs. It's a lot more difficult to envision with the Reds. So while it would be contrarian and while you would be directly targeting the most highly owned by far pitcher on the slate, I don't know how strong an option that really is once you really boil it down. Ellie obviously is a superstar. 5,800, 4,000 is honestly probably 200 too cheap. He should never be below 6,000 given his any given slate explosive upside for counting stats across the board. He's got 17 home runs. He's got 49 stolen bases, a 229 ISO, and his creator runs 29% better than average while just absolutely murdering the ball. Strikes out a ton, but draws his walks. Totally viable option. Key priority bat if you're stacking Reds. Don't really care about the righty-lefty. I know that he is diminished for power on that side, but he's pulled things together at least as of the last time we checked. That said, we are again just dealing with the pure nature of it being a terrible spot against Chris Sale. So does the righty-lefty play into it more than just like if they were both neutral-handed but equally talented to where they are? Probably not. It's probably just Chris Sale is dominant. But if you need the extra reason to avoid Ellie, yeah, that part of it is there as well. Spencer Steer, tons of pop from the right side of the plate. 15 homers, also has speed with 15 stolen bases, a 190 ISO, creating runs 8% better than average. Another key priority bat in this lineup, and I love the second base eligibility on the FanDuel slate still, but again, bad spot. Stevenson, 38-28, a high-end catcher with 11 home runs, a 196 ISO, and a 104 WRC+, and a killer spot in the lineup most days in what is a productive lineup. He makes very good contact with 10% barrels, 46.2% hard hits. Just a rough day to be stacking Reds. Fairchild, mix and match option, mostly a platoon-based hitter, 199 plate appearances, 6 homers, 13 steals. He's all right, but not overly reliable, 87 WRC+, not a consistent contributor, mix and match caliber play. Novi Marte, mix and match rookie-type player, Sub Mendoza, and a 217 on base so far, 33 WRC+, 2 homers, 2 steals, pretty mediocre. Austin Slater, a righty bat, late in the lineup for a cheap price, but another guy, Sub Mendoza, just a 308 on base, not really doing much to justify any shares. Santiago Espinal, not much of a hitter. He does have 6 home runs and 6 steals, but it's very infrequent counting stats and basically nothing else out of that bat. The interesting one down lineup continues to be Rhys Hines, 4,300, 3,400. He's slashing 353, 389, 971 over his 36 opportunities. 5 home runs in that stretch and a 618 ISO. So he hits the ball harder than 2 Aaron Judges by that measure. 25% barrel rate, 41.7% hard hits so far for Hines. It is extremely small sample. He's been very good in that little stretch, but now he's facing Chris Sale. Again, just a rough day to be rostering Reds. Kelenich's good from the leadoff role for the Braves. 42, 3,000. If you're targeting Nick Martinez, I think it's a decent idea. 11 home runs from him, a 297 on base. That's really got to be in like the 320s territory at least to really justify that spot. But they're just trying to give the kid a lot of plate appearances, lefty bat, to get them started up top. And he does have a good amount of power. You can see nearly a 10% barrel, 45.3% hard hits, right in line with what he's done previously. He's been a very much of a roller coaster kind of a player early in his career, but he does have a lot of skills. So I would continue going back to him as long as he's still hitting leadoff. Nacho, again, 2,200 on FanDuel, has my interest. Shortstop and second base eligible. Kid can hit. That is what he's known for. We looked at him briefly yesterday. Come on. How many different names can one guy have? Oh, that's cool, Fangraphs. Thanks. That explains it. So in the downloads and in everything on the supporting end that's in the spreadsheet, they have his name on Fangraphs as Nacho Alvarez Jr., but in the search, you've actually got to search him as Ignacio, which makes a ton of sense. Have mismatches in your own system because we don't have enough on our end. Over 132 plate appearances in AAA this year. Nacho was slashing 336, 432, 575 with a 15.2% strikeout, 12.9% walk, 7 home runs, and 5 stolen bases. He had not hit any home runs in AA over 202 plate appearances before getting the promotion to AAA, but he had stolen 16 bases. He had gotten on at a 381 clip and created runs 15% better than average. He hit 7 high A home runs in 2023 over 501 plate appearances, stole 16 bases, had a killer triple slash and a 123 WRC+. More of a hitter than a power bat, probably especially at the major league level, but the ability to hit the ball, get on base, and swipe some bags and get involved at a low strikeout, high walk definitely seems like an out-of-the-gate kind of a skill. He's only 21, so he's on the young side of 21. 21 years old, 3 months and 12 days old as of today per Fangraphs. So maybe needs a little bit of time to really catch up to Major League pitching. He went 0 for yesterday, 0 for 4, struck out once, but does have a lot of ability with the bat in terms of being a contact and on-base focus hitter with speed. So for DFS purposes, hitting second in this mix of hitters makes him kind of interesting. Ozuna for 59-41, 28 homers and 283 ISO, 170 WRC plus. We'll see what kind of pitches he sees without a lot of support. No Austin Riley. Travis d'Arnaud hitting cleanup today, 37-29. Tons of catcher power. 9 home runs at 211 ISO, 118 WRC plus. He's no slouch and he's not expensive at all. Killer spot in the lineup. Usually he's further down the lineup than this. So getting him today as a bargain at catcher on DraftKings, kind of compelling. I don't love using him and Matt Olson in the same lineup on FanDuel to occupy catcher and first base and util, but it's doable. Just depends on what you're putting it together with more than anything else. Olson's got 13 home runs, but just a 168 ISO now. We're really diminished version of Matt Olson, but I do still think he's a high potential player on this team and one of your most highest priority bats if you're stacking Braves. Adam Duvall for 33-27 is really just here for right-handed power. Eddie Rosario is really just here for left-handed power. Both guys sub Mendoza, both guys sub 250 on base percentages. You could basically throw Orlando Arcia into that bucket, although he's at 212 on the average side. Sub 250 on base, 7 home runs, just a 57 WRC plus. When you talk about how bad the Braves have been this year, I mean, there's your problem. Those bottom 4 hitters in this lineup, and I know Rosario wasn't on the team all season, but they've gotten basically this level of contribution out of everybody. The average of a 51 WRC plus across 4 spots in your lineup. It's brutal. Zach Short, really not a strong DFS option at all. Arcia, barely playable. Rosario, Duvall, more playable if you're looking to add on and build beyond the top 5 guys. But it is a short Braves lineup today. It's Chris Sale, just kind of on his own, floating above the Drek here, and then it's probably the Braves bats after that. Really not that much from the Reds. I don't think it's a great day to be contrarian with the Reds. I don't think we're getting to Nick Martinez after I reduce this projection to accurately reflect the innings. Phils and the Twins. Twins lineup is here. That's Simeon Woods Richardson on the mound for Minnesota, going up against a very high-quality Phillies lineup. Kyle Schwarber drawing a 10-plus in the home run model. Bryce Harper homered yesterday, right below the 10 mark. They're not quite as highly projected as they were for power upside yesterday, but maybe they have a better overall day. Their actual just DFS number projections kind of in line with what we saw and have seen from this team on good days. So like the upside for the Phillies bats. Woods Richardson checks in with a 3.51 ERA and a 4.30 xFIP, just a 20.9% strikeout rate, but he's not inept. That's reflects some good performances. 9.5% barrels is a little bit concerning against this Philly squad on a 17.4 degree average launch, 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo. Probably getting a little lucky to keep home runs to just 2.35% so far. 3.51 ERA and a 4.30 xFIP kind of reflects a little bit of overperformance in the ability to check runs. 87 by Stuff Plus, a little bit below average across the arsenal. Maybe has pitched over his head in some of those good games. Last time out, went 4 1/3, struck out 7, gave up 2 earned runs on 7 hits. That was at San Francisco. 2 earned runs on 3 hits against the Astros, struck out 4, walked 2. He had 3 straight games of exactly 4 strikeouts and 2 walks. Wow. What an oddly consistent game log. Going back to May 28th, not to take too much time on this, he had either 4 strikeouts or 6 strikeouts in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight games. 3 of those were 6, the others were 4. In almost every one of those games, he walked exactly 2 hitters. Gave up 2 to 4 runs. Most of the time, it was 2 or 3. almost exactly 4 hits in almost every one of those starts. One of them was 3, another one was 6. Between 4 innings and 6 innings, it's just such consistently average delivery. It's actually kind of incredible to look at. He hasn't really gotten tattooed. 5 earned runs was the worst he's done. That was back in beginning of May. But he typically does give up a couple of earned runs. He's somewhat gettable for power. There's a few 2 home run games in there. But again, I think he's probably gotten lucky to keep home runs down to this level, considering that and that. Less so this, but somewhat that. I prefer the Phillies side, but at 6,200, I definitely think you can take some shares out of the bargain bin as an SP2 on DraftKings. So that's another guy to keep in the mix when we're talking about just shaking up from your Chris Sale and Jose Soriano, and then to a lesser degree Sale and John Gray pairings, or any of these guys and those guys, just to get away from the most commonly built paths. For a bigger savings from these guys, Woods Richardson is not that far off the mark, especially from John Gray. There's not that much daylight between what those two have done this season. Yes, it's a much better matchup for Gray, but that's offset a little bit by price and a little bit by popularity. And that will most definitely put you on a different path than, again, 80% of everybody who's using any one of these top 4 pitchers is going to be pairing with either one of these 2 pitchers from the value tier. So making one decision differently there buys you a whole hell of a lot, and he's not going to be the most common pivot even. And you get a little bit more to spend on your mediocre bats. So now you're on a different path. You've got that high-end guy, value guy. But now everybody who went to Sale Soriano, to just continue that example, or even Sale Gray, has spent at least $800 more than you, if not $1,400 more than you. So that buys you a major bat upgrade, even if you all land on the same stacks. You've got the ability to spend that money differently than they do. So you're differentiated from the pool, even when you do land on, again, maybe the Rays are a popular value team, or if you go to the Red Sox for a 3-man, maybe now I can buy Tyler O'Neill where the other guys can't get Tyler O'Neill, and they're going to the mediocre Red Sox. It just puts you in different tiers to make those kind of decisions. So again, I do think that is very viable. This, I'm a lot more concerned about. It is a cheap price on the FanDuel scale. I think it's playable-ish, but I don't know that it's necessarily worth targeting. It doesn't nearly have the purchasing power that does. It will be low-owned, but that's probably all it is. Zach Wheeler's just a star-caliber pitcher. Tremendous option going up against the Twins in a diminished version of the Twins overall. No Carlos Correa. Still missing... you know who I mean. They also don't have Byron Buxton in the lineup today. Willie Castro, Trevor Larnach, Carlos Santana, Max Kepler, Eduardo Julian. It's a pretty limited version of the Twins lineup overall. So a tremendous pitcher like Wheeler, I see no real obstacles to success at 9,500, 10-6. Fire away with shares of Zach Wheeler. 270 ERA, a 346 xFIP, 27% strikeout rate, 12.7% swinging. Very good at checking power, 85.9 miles an hour of exit velos, nothing, 31.4% hard hits. Just continuing to do Zach Wheeler things and be a very, very strong option on most slates. Won't be the most popular pitcher overall from the expensive tier on this one. That's so much the benefit. I mean, maybe the matchup against the Twins scares people away from it. The more appealing matchup with Chris Sale. So, a lot of upside for Zach Wheeler at probably what will be a little bit of a lower ownership mark. The Phillies bats going up and down that lineup. Schwarbs is a tremendous option for power upside. He's hit 19 home runs, a 196 ISO. Could be a little bit better in that department. Draws a ton of walks, gets involved a lot. 128 WRC plus, 55.2% hard hits from him. 5,400, 3,900. Easily affordable at the top of the Phillies lineup. Trey Turner on a surge and just generally a superstar anyway. 12 home runs, 12 stolen bases, a 197 ISO, 160 WRC plus. Second only to 166 that Bryce Harper's putting up. 23 home runs for him, a 281 ISO. 12.7% barrels, 47.3% hard hits. It's a trio of superstars and their price like it, but they are well worth it.
Alec Bohm, not that far behind that group. 5,300, 3,400 is not that far behind them price-wise either. 11 home runs on the season, a 129 WRC+. Plus. He's been fantastic for them, slashing 296, 350, 475. That's a big part of why the Phillies are so good. Look at these on-base percentages for that top part of the lineup. All of their stars get on base really, really well. It's a killer group of hitters. JT Realmuto back and cheap across sites. 4,500 hitting fifth on DK. 2,800 on FanDuel. Easy to afford. He made a nice fourth man in on FanDuel yesterday when I only had, I think it was the same price, 2,800 to spend. Pretty strong option with a lot of power at the catcher spot still, a little bit of speed, the ability to get on base, hit for average. It's been a mediocre 231 plate appearances. He just came back from injury, but he was hitting the ball very hard, 10.4% barrels, 48.7% hard hits. Still very much looks like JT Realmuto out there to me. Bryson Stott in the middle of a tailspin right now, down to 236, 323, 346, a 91 WRC+. Plus. 6 homers, 22 steals, a mix and match piece at this point, lefty second baseman. Nicky Castellanos, 44, 33, has 14 home runs. A lot of mediocrity in the slash line, but still definitely does have power. A lot of times you're just hoping for an earthquake or something, and then you get your big home run day out of Nicky Castellanos. Brandon Marsh, a lot of ability to drive the ball. 8.4% barrels, 48.4% hard hits, 9 home runs, 11 steals, and 274 chances. Only cost 36 on DraftKings. That's a downright bargain. 28 on FanDuel. Very comfy price as well. But he is very cheap on DK. That's a nice way to mix up a Philly stack. He's created runs 16% better than average this season. He gets on at a 339 clip. He's not just a power bat. He's a really capable multi-category contributor. God forbid you should move him up to the 6th spot where Bryson Stott's projected to hit. If you got him there, fire away. That's a great option. In fact, they should absolutely just do that. Put him here. Hell, you could even put him here. Move Realmuto to 5, Bryson Stott down to 8. It's probably a better version of that lineup. Joel Rojas just here for defense. On the Twins side, the confirmed lineup is Willie Castro in the leadoff spot again. 2,900 with 4-position eligibility. Always looks good on FanDuel. 4,500 on DraftKings, both middle infield spots. He's hit 7 home runs. He's stolen 10 bases. He's created runs 24% better than average. Overall, he's more of a speed and correlated scoring option, but he's getting on base at a killer 356 clip. He's doing what you need to do to do that. Doing what you need to do that. There you go. So he's been a good enough player, but he's really more of a, when I'm stacking Twins, I'm including Willie Castro at the top. Trevor Larnach has a 10.1% barrel, 43.4% hard hits. He's blasted 10 home runs on the season, a 192 ISO. Reasonable lefty bat. That's over 226 plate appearances, so it's good power output. 116 WRC plus on the season. Medium strikeout at 20.4%, 8.8% walk. Not a bad hitter. Shown signs of improvement in his moderate sample this season. Carlos Santana hitting 3rd. Not exactly where anybody wants to find Carlos Santana, but he's had a decent season after a cold start. Up to 14 home runs, a 188 ISO. He's created runs 17% better than average. He's always been low strikeout, high walk, able to get on base with a little bit of thunder in that bat. So for 43.29, hitting 3rd, if you're stacking up against Zach Wheeler, which I do not recommend, even as a contrarian play, it's another spot where it's just like, do I really want to go with the medium version of the Twins lineup that has 24% strikeouts against a pretty good strikeout pitcher in Wheeler, who's also so good at suppressing power? When I need to get power out of the Twins lineup, it really doesn't feel like a good fit to me for contrarian shares. So good price, good spot in the lineup, tough matchup. Max Kepler, same thing, 41.27, lefty bat, 6 home runs, a 136 ISO, really scuffling this season, but does have a 2% better than average mark by WRC+. Plus. Just not doing much in terms of the power output, not hitting the ball like he has in the past, but he's very cheap hitting cleanup today. Edward Leon for 34.25. 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases, but a pretty mediocre slash line, over 202 chances this year. Still 11.3% barrels. Last year it was 13.1, and he had a 44.9% hard hit rate last year. Strikes out an absolute ton, but can draw some walks. Not a completely uninteresting player if you're going to Twins. Think you should probably prioritize him, honestly, at second base for those prices. It's probably like... Man, this is a team that's comprised of these are all like 3rd priority guys. There's not a 1 or a 2 top priority, 2nd priority guy. Anybody from that group, and that probably just is a direct line 5-man right there. What's highlighted is a very playable value stack if you choose to target Wheeler. It's just, again, Wheeler's not a very targetable fantasy pitcher. Even on a bad day, he doesn't typically get blown up. He doesn't typically give up a ton of power. He had the one ugly game all year. It was against Baltimore. At Baltimore, he gave up 8 earned runs on 9 hits in 4 1/3 and allowed 4 home runs. He's allowed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he allowed 4 home runs in that game, and in every other start this season, he's allowed a total of 7 across 18 other starts. Not the most targetable pitcher DFS-wise. So I would stay away from Twins, but looking further down the lineup, you do get Brooks Lee for a cheap price, $4,200. He's had 2 home runs in his first 63 chances. You've got Matt Wallner, who's hit 3 home runs in 63 chances this year. Wallner's got more realistic power upside, I think, but he's also a much higher strikeout option. Mix and match options at both spots there for fair prices. Austin Martin, another allegedly somewhat high-end kid, so far over 130. Mediocre, 252, 315, 353, and 93 WRC plus, 1 home run, 6 steals. And then Christian Vasquez just here to catch the ball, not really here to hit it all that much. Does have 4 home runs in 195 chances, and we're very proud of him. Zach Wheeler, Phillies bats, Woods Richardson on DraftKings, and then, Twins bats way down there if you want them. Eric McPherson in the chat. What's going on, EMAC? Talking about your boy Landon Knack in a little while. He's pushing some ugly home run numbers toward those Giants. I'm not sure what the crew over at Osimo thinks of the Giants today, but I'm seeing a lot of power. I don't love them as a stack, but I think that they might hit a couple dingers off your boy Landon Knack. Goofius apparently likes Colin Ray. I tell you, if you're inclined to play Colin Ray, it's not the worst spot in the world for Colin Ray at 7,400, 8,400. I don't love it on FanDuel, but it's more playable at 74 on DraftKings. He is not a overly reliable pitcher, but he can have a good strikeout day from time to time. This projected version of the Cubs lineup, 24.3% strikeouts on the season. It's just you're dealing with Ray, who's at 17.2% on his own. 3.77 ERA, but a worse 4.48 xFIP, just a 7.3% swinging strike rate. He's a pitcher I prefer to target with bats to find some home runs. But again, every now and then he can have a decent start. Last time out against Washington, 5 2/3, gave up 2 earned, but struck out 7. No home run allowed, only 5 hits. Walked just 1. Start before that, 7 earned runs in 5 innings, gave up a homer, struck out 3, 2 walks. Was good in the start before that at Colorado, though. 6-hitter over his 7 innings, no runs, 4 strikeouts. He's a mid-board DraftKings SP2 dart. He's right there, like directly in the middle of the slate. I don't think I would play him all that much, even in 150 lineups on FanDuel. 5 shares, something like that, maybe. Not a lot. I don't have much faith, especially at that price. And you guys know, I do think more of this Cubs lineup than maybe they've shown on the field this season. And they are the kind of a team that can frustrate a guy like Colin Ray, get on base, knock a home run into the seats, and now you're already, dealing with a deficit of points. So it's not my favorite spot on the board, but I wouldn't begrudge anybody shares at 7,400. Jamison Taillon, I think, is just in danger on this side. Seeing some strong projections from the Brewers. They've got a lot of good run creators. They've got some good power bats. They steal a lot of bases. They get on base very effectively. I don't think Taillon's bad. 3.10 ERA, a 4.18 xFIP, which is a manageable number despite being a run higher. It's still a reasonably decent xFIP, and he's got a very low walk rate at just 4.7%. He's not a very high-end strikeout pitcher. 8.7% swinging strikes, 26.9% CSW, 19.6% strikeout overall. Not the worst strikeout number on the slate, better than his opponent, for example, and a very strong strikeout to walk ratio, which is important. But he's mediocre. 87.24 rating by Stuff Plus. Again, better than his opponent, but that's not really saying much. Susceptible to some runs, but hasn't really gotten exploited this season. 5 earned runs is the max. By and large, you're looking at 2 or 3 in most of these games, which obviously jibes with a 3.10 ERA. 7 strikeouts in each of 2 games, 2 starts back, just struck out 3 in the most recent one against St. Louis. Had a 10 strikeout high against the Mets. That was a biggie. Mostly we're looking at 5 or 6 being your high end. The 10 strikeout game is a big outlier for the season. Has been in the past a 20+% strikeout pitcher. 21.4 last year, 20.7 the year before. It's a little bit of additional upside, but the Brewers are relatively effective at limiting strikeouts, especially their best hitters up toward the top of the lineup. So, again, just not a good spot, and he's not exactly discounted, 83.92. Even on DraftKings, he kind of falls by the wayside by comparison to a lot of better options. And I meant to highlight that one. Looking at Brewers' bats against Taillon, I kind of like that spot. They project out well, especially that top half. 45, 3,000. Bryce Turang continues to check in at just very good pricing across sites. That is a high-end second baseman. It's somebody you can keep in mind for one-off shares. Grab the confirm lineup if it's in. Doesn't look like it's in. Remember, this is a game that does have a lot of rain in the area. So does that Braves game. So keep those in mind. So continuing on with the projected lineup. Turang's stolen 30 bases. He's gotten on at a 330 clip. 101 WRC plus on the season. Could definitely be better. If he continues getting on at that kind of a pace in the leadoff role ahead of these bats, he wasn't hitting leadoff all season. I like that WRC plus to climb. And he's got obviously very strong upside for counting stats. Doesn't crush the ball when he makes contact, but makes a lot of contact. Low strikeout rate. William Contreras continues to be one of the best catchers in baseball. 11 home runs, 284, 350, 435, a 122 WRC plus. Mashes when he connects. Connects very frequently. Excellent spot in the lineup. Just 5,100, 3,100 across sites. Absolutely viable on either site. You can play him like a first baseman and skip Rhys Hoskins on FanDuel, or you can plug them both into some of your lineups and get the power upside that comes with Hoskins. Christian Yelich for 56.39 continues to put up superstar caliber numbers. 155 WRC plus, a 190 ISO, 11 homers, 21 steals. Fantastic option in the outfield for those prices. For the DK price, he's a fantastic option. For FanDuel, he's priced appropriately and is a very good option. Willy Adames, 43.34. Another player priced very differently on DraftKings than FanDuel. That's a bargain on DraftKings. I talked about this yesterday. 10.8% barrels, 40.1% hard hits. He's hit 16 dingers. He's stolen 12 bases. He's got a 117 WRC plus. This is a good Willie Calhoun year. I'm a buyer at 4,300. I'm a buyer at 34 on FanDuel. Sal Frelick, just a contact-focused hitter, 14 stolen bases, a 343 on base, capable of resetting the table for Jackson Chourio, Rhys Hoskins, Joey Ortiz, Garrett Mitchell down toward the bottom of the lineup. Hoskins is here for power. He's got 15 home runs on the season, a 202 ISO. Still makes pretty good contact, 12.2% barrels especially. High strikeout, but very capable. Chourio has been mixed throughout his rookie season. 10 home runs, 12 steals, but 249, 298, 398. Tons of individual talent. A lot of upside. Going to grow as a player as time goes on. But right now, just an okay buy at 36.27. It's not like he's high priced for the talent. And that goes if he's hitting 6. That also goes if he's hitting 9. He's equally playable. Joey Ortiz has cooled off after a very strong start, but he's still getting on at a 363 clip. He has a 124 WRC plus. He's extremely involved, and 3,800, 2,700, he's not exactly high priced across sites. You're more often than not putting him at third base on FanDuel, which is fine. He's capable of holding that spot. 3,800, you have no choice but to put him at third base on DraftKings if you're using him. And then Garrett Mitchell's just kind of a mix and match outfielder. Over 44 plate appearances, been effective. 122 WRC plus. On the Cubs side, Nico for 41.28, mix and match second baseman with shortstop eligibility on the FanDuel slate. 14 steals, decent on-base percentage, just below league average for run creation. Not great, but playable. Michael Busch, definitely very appealing with 12 home runs, a 192 ISO, a 132 WRC plus. Drives the ball from the left side of the plate and only costs 3,800 at first base on DraftKings. Has first, second, and third base eligibility. Most importantly, second base eligibility at 2,900 on FanDuel. Continues to be a major bargain over there. Facing Colin Ray, I like that power upside. Looking at like 2, 3, 4, 5 from the Cubs, just take the heart of their power right here. 2 guys 8+, 2 guys above the magic number for home run upside against Ray. Again, Ray is a pitcher that I have targeted for a season plus now for power upside. Give up a 4.45% home run rate last year on 43% hard hits. This year we're at 3.17, but the hard hits look roughly the same. The exit velo is almost exactly the same. He's given up more barrels on a higher average launch angle. So I can definitely see the power upside for the Cubs through that stretch. And Michael Busch, key part of it if you're going to those bats. I would not skip him. Seiya Suzuki at 10.25 looks like a good option. 11.7% barrels, 49.5% hard hits. He's hit 13 home runs. He's stolen 10 bases, a 200 ISO, 123 WRC plus. 16 homers for Ian Happ with a 216 ISO, a 126 WRC plus. Killer contact numbers. Love Ian Happ for 4,300, 3,300 across sites. The Cubbies might be a really interesting value stack in place of the Rays or alongside the Rays as a value share, because on DK, nobody above 46. FanDuel, nobody above 33 against Colin Ray with some high-end opportunities. This is a game that I talked about at the top when we were breaking down the runs as being a spot where we would potentially target bats on both sides, and I think that's very much going to be the case. Chris Morel still making killer contact, 12% barrels, 44.6% hard hits. Hovering around the Mendoza line over 408 plate appearances, not great. Just a 304 on base, not great. Just a 179 ISO, honestly, with that kind of contact is not great. 95 WRC plus puts him below average, but 18 home runs, 7 stolen bases, one of the more appealing power bats on this team, if nothing else. And not super high strikeout, can draw some walks, should be putting up a better run creation number than that, and definitely should have a better ISO than that given the way that he strikes the ball. Good player for a cheap price at third base. Mike Tauchman, mostly just here to get on base, 348 on base percentage on the season, creating runs 8% better than average on the back of that. That's what Mike Tauchman does. Dansby, just a little bit cheap now that he's slashing just 213, 286, 345 in the midst of a terrible season, worst of his career. He is still making decent contact, 9 home runs, 6 steals, but getting difficult to trust. Granted, the prices are going down with that difficulty, so it helps to still get to him. But, yeah, it hasn't been pretty for Dansby this year. Tomas Nido just here to play catcher. Pete Crow Armstrong just here to catch the ball out in center field and maybe steal the occasional base. Brewers bats, Cubs bats. Colin Ray over Tyon, but I don't really want either one of them. DraftKings Colin Ray between the 4 pitcher spots is really the only even moderately appealing of the 4 pitcher spots to me. And even that, I think it's really shaky. Chi Sox and the Rangers, we've got both of these lineups in. Leadoff Lou Bob again. Lewis, yes, Mamba, thank you. Royce Lewis, that's who I was trying to think of before. A lot of chat going on with EMAC in there. Watch out, Stevie Franchise. EMAC could be the first governor, mayor, secretary of state, and president while holding shows on Saturdays. Oh, no. Christian Scott strained his UCL? Ah, it sucks. That kid's good. I like him. I'm kind of glad I traded him, but that blows. Yes, Emacs, I think you all know Emacs filed his paperwork with the with both campaigns. Because, one of them's considering already switching out of the vice president that they chose, and obviously one of them's looking for a vice president. Emacs filing paperwork with both. He wants to cover all his bases. Emac is Doc Brown. Yeah, I saw Royce doing a rehab assignment. That's what put his name in my head before, and then I couldn't conjure it just all of a sudden. D, I haven't seen one. Dimitri asking about a pitch count for Crochet. I haven't seen any official word, but I am very concerned about it. I think they give him the showcase because the trade deadline's like next week. So, like I said at the top of the show, an acquiring team not necessarily going to want to get him coming off 2 innings. They're going to want him stretched out. Not that he's not, completely diminished. Your arm doesn't shrivel up after just, a couple of weeks of not pitching full innings, but it doesn't help. So I can see like somewhere splitting the difference, not to sit completely on the fence on the question, But I think they might sit on the fence as far as what they do with him and just give him a hard 5 innings. And obviously, if he rings up a huge pitch count before that, they'll yank him. But I think the goal is probably 5 innings. Showcase him. Give him an opportunity to rack up a good strikeout number. They don't care about wins and losses at this point, so it doesn't really matter. And then I think he's out after 5 to protect the potential to trade. Larry C saying 3 to 4 innings. And again, I could see that as well, Larry. I just think that I think that the showcase idea kind of there. I'm sure every scout in the league is going to be at this game to watch him. So they're going to want to give him a little bit of run. Not that anybody's got major questions at this point. I just think at worst, I think it's going to be a better showcase opportunity than the previous one. The issue is definitely just that he's not priced for that, right? If we're getting 5 innings even, if we're getting 4 innings, I do think he's got the talent and has shown it this year with a 35.2% strikeout rate to give you 8 to 10 strikeouts in 5 innings, more likely, 7 or 8. So you could get a reasonable DFS score for your money, but I don't think you're getting ceiling, which is the key thing. At 9,800 at 10.4, you need that ability to book ceiling on top of those medians. So I don't think we're far off the mark necessarily, even if it is a 5-inning start. It's the question of what is beyond the numbers that we've got on the page. And I don't think there's much. Whether we call it 4 innings, whether we call it 5 innings, I think it works either way. Right? So as long as you consider the 5 innings your cap, know that you're not getting much ceiling for your money. So I think it does very much limit the Crochet investment today. That said, he's a terrific pitcher. 3.02 ERA at 2.40 xFIP, 35.2% Ks, just a 5.4% walk. Converted reliever, first time as a starter this season. He's been the best pitcher in baseball, or one of them. Absolutely tremendous option. Or absolutely tremendous pitcher. Maybe not the best option in terms of that. Yeah, Jim, the highest overall fantasy points just in the aggregate sense is definitely the Red Sox. Coors Field effect, they're at a 6+ implied run total. They're going to be the chalk of the day. Everybody's going to try and get there. I moved it over, didn't I? But yeah, that's your run board. You can see the Sox a full run higher than anybody else. The next 2 highest are the other side of Coors with the Rockies or the Yankees at 5.04. And this might have already come down. I don't fully believe in the Yankees being 5+ with that version of the Yankees lineup outside of it just being a Yankee Stadium game. And the idea that Judge and Soto could put up 4 of those 5 runs just on their own. Let's see, does that come down? It's come down a little bit. Let's see, we're still at 9, but now we're 133. That's 145. So it cuts the Yanks just below 5 now. That looks a little bit better. So that just got a little bit tighter on the line, but the run total stayed the same for the game run total. So anyway, Crochet, those innings are definitely going to be problematic. I don't know how much I would have them. Building 1 lineup probably wouldn't go to it, honestly. Building 20, I don't know. I don't know that I get there. I'm really concerned about what the depth of innings looks like. That said, if you need a tiebreak, I did leave him in for the Dynasty League this week to take this start. Innings pitched counts as a category in that league, so we'll see what we get. Johnny Gray on the other side, another big topic of conversation on the day. He's got a 3.96 ERA, a 4.10 xFIP. He's been serviceable enough, 19.8% strikeout rate, but again, he's been really limited for the last, 2 months? Has not struck out more than 4 hitters since May 10th. He struck out 7 that day. Every other start through mid-June was either 3 or 4. Every start since mid-June has been either 2 or 3 with a 1 and a 0 on the board there too. It's been really low end for strikeouts. He's also been pretty low end for innings. Obviously, he's given up some earned runs along the way. But we've had some short outings. He's worked some weird innings out of the bullpen. Had a game in the beginning of June where he went 2 1/3 out of the pen, faced 9 hitters, struck out 4, had a decent performance there. And then just last week on the 19th, pitched an inning out of the pen against Baltimore, gave up 1 hit to 4 hitters, didn't strike anybody out, didn't walk anybody, didn't give up any runs. Full start before that, back on the 8th, he only went 5 innings, 2 starts before that. Completed 6 innings back on the 22nd, but that was his only quality start since also May 15th. It's been very, very dicey, but that's why he only cost $7,750. Going up against the worst lineup in baseball with a 25.9% strikeout rate. I think he is a justifiably playable and should be popular kind of a value play, most particularly on DraftKings for $7,000. But I tell you what, I'm warming to the idea of $7,500 on FanDuel. You need to get that sixth inning, which he has not given you regularly at all this season. Strikeout upside would be nice. But given the opponent, I'm a little bit warmer to the idea on FanDuel. I wouldn't do it a lot. He's probably not going to be my my value pitcher. I put together two teams in a stack that I really liked and had, I think it was Soriano in there. Which, again, just, chalky, obvious value play, but it fit, and I think my lineup's differentiated enough. So I don't think I need John Gray in one lineup, but if I was building out 150, I'd have a decent little wall of them, I think, even on FanDuel. Rough spot to say whether you should hedge or not, given how bad the White Sox are in general. You'd obviously have Luis Robert in almost every one of those hedge lineups. 243 ISO, 11 home runs, 12 steals, a 115 WRC+. He's their best player by a pretty wide stretch. You do have Eloy Jimenez back in the lineup today, hitting fifth, 3,800, 2,700. He is shockingly affordable, but he's been really bad in the 225 plate appearances we've had him this season, and obviously has suffered multiple injuries yet again this year. In between those two, you've got Andrew Benintendi, who's just awful now. Andrew Vaughn, who's mediocre at best, 11 home runs, a 151 ISO, and 89 WRC+. Gavin Sheets, who's not much better, 7 home runs and 324 chances out of him, 222, 312, 370, 7 points worse than average for run creation. Paul DeJong, 17 home runs, 199 ISO, capable of hitting for power, but that's pretty much it. Does have third base eligibility now on DraftKings, which is more playable at 2,900 than I think booking shortstop and chewing up shortstop shares with him is. So I do think that makes him more playable as your third guy from a short three-man White Sox stack where you just go with the obvious Lubob, Jimenez, DeJong. I think that's playable, but it's still limited, and it's the three most popular guys on that team. Nicky Lopez, back control, and not really even doing that this year. 71 WRC+, terrible slash line. Brooks Baldwin is the dead min. He is a relatively high-caliber prospect for this team. Hasn't done anything in his 14 plate appearances. Mix and match option in the infield on either site. Corey Lee, 9 home runs on the season. 68 WRC+. Wildly inconsistent option at catcher. Not a good spot in the lineup. Not all that playable. On the Rangers side, diminished version of the Rangers lineup. No Corey Seager. You do have Semien, but you get Robbie Grossman hitting second. Down lineup, we've got Justin Foscue and Jonathan Ornelas sliding into the lineup. An underperforming Marcus Semien in the top spot, 14 home runs, 4,700, 3,300. I think most of the underperformance is still roughly cooked into those prices. Definitely on DraftKings, less so on FanDuel, but there is a discount there from peak Semien for sure. Grossman for just 32.24 is a mix and match piece at best, mediocre slash line, and okay on base at 335, but creating runs just 13% better than average over his 164 chances this year. He's a substandard overall player. Josh Smith, 4,200, 3,000. We're down to 283, 81, 447. But again, I do think that he does continue to, in terms of getting on base and staying involved, maybe outperform his X stats a little bit, which he's been doing all season. 4,200, 3,000 is a reasonable price. As long as he stays around that price level, he's still playable. Has probably had a better first half than we'll see as the second half. Wyatt Langford for 42.29, probably the opposite. I think we see a stronger second half out of Wyatt Langford. 313 mediocre plate appearances in the first half of the rookie season, but seemed to be coming on a little bit, moved up the lineup, and definitely a playable piece for 42.29. That is not an expensive price. Adolis Garcia for 44.31 with all his quality upside, at least for power. Definitely a playable piece in the outfield at those prices. 13.3% barrels, 46.1% hard hits. Diminished for him, but still excellent just in a vacuum. 17 home runs is good. 7 steals to add a little bit of fantasy scoring. 185 ISO is diminished from where it should be. 82 WRC plus is definitely lower than you want, but a very high-end, high-ceiling player. That stretch of Rangers is very cheap, and then there's a lot of cheap usable parts around them. Nathaniel Lowe, you guys know I like this hitter. 353 on base, creating runs 10% better than average, has more power upside than we've seen so far this year. 3,400, 2,700, easy click at first base. Jonah Heim, moderate pop at catcher, 9 home runs and 329 plate appearances. I feel like I've been saying that for most of the season, and he hasn't really delivered a ton of power, just a 118 ISO. You get the occasional home run out of him for a cheap price, but I don't love the lineup spot when we got a lot of catchers on this slate hitting a little higher up with some more quality available. So mix and match catcher at best. Foscue and Ornelas at the bottom of the lineup are mix and match, if that, caliber players. Oof, man. Nothing? Garrett Crochet would be the best option if we could rely on innings, but I don't think we can, so scratch that. It's probably Rangers bats, but the innings where they're going to face Crochet is definitely not Rangers bats, so it's difficult to put them on top. It's difficult to put John Gray on top because of the John Gray of it. Obviously, we're not putting the White Sox on top. Obviously, I cannot choose the goblet in front of me. I really don't know exactly how to rank this. It's 4 corners of just absolute mediocrity since Crochet is probably not going more than 3 to 5 innings. John Gray's not at all reliable. Just to put a button on this game, I'll say John Gray DK value up top. Rangers bats after that, but not at all comfortable with the innings they're going to be facing Crochet. 3 innings of Garrett Crochet after that, and then, and only then, 3-man stacks from the White Sox. I do think the White Sox are actually a little bit more viable than that, just given the mediocrity of John Gray this season, but not much more playable than they otherwise would be. And now on to one of my favorite games for offense on this slate. Thank God. Jake Swales, top 30 again. Or Mamba top 30 again. Congrats, buddy. It's awesome. Jim Parrish, we're just getting to that game and absolutely adore the Arizona stack today. One of my favorite spots on the board. You can see a lot of power shining through in the middle of the lineup from some of their key hitters. I think Jock Peterson is dramatically underpriced on FanDuel at 2,600. Probably the bargain spot of the day, in my opinion, hitter-wise. So, yeah. All over the Diamondbacks. You could probably guess they're in my placeholder lineup right now. Todd Strong, no. Confidence in Jahmai Jones hitting leadoff. I mean, you could put Larry C from Chad up there and just hope he gets, just lean into one and take your base. And then he'd have value hitting ahead of Soto and Judge. So it's really just that. It's a killer lineup spot. He's not expensive. But I mean, in 134 Major League plate appearances, going back to 2020 when he made his debut with the Angels, we're talking about 203, 263, 285, a .081 ISO. He's been 46% worse than average for run creation. He's got 1 home run and 3 stolen bases in that stretch, and he struck out at a 35.1% clip. So, no. That doesn't scream effective leadoff hitter. A 263 career on base. Very small sample, obviously. If we're looking at the minors, did have a good run with the Dodgers in 2023 in AAA. 263 plate appearances, /292, 427, 542 as a 25-year-old. Adding on top of that last year in AAA with Milwaukee, 182 plate appearances, 232, but 392 on base, 352 slug. So he was effective at getting on base in AAA as a 25-year-old last year, and he added a little bit of power to that equation. That's really the best I can do on Jahmai Jones. Not a lot of faith. I assume you were asking sarcastically. Alec Marsh, targetable pitcher here. 4.52 ERA, a 4.22 xFIP. He's mediocre. He's not terrible. But I think there's plenty of premium contact available that's shining through in the home run model. 10.2% barrel so far, 41% hard hits, 90.2 miles an hour. So we're above all of our indicators for extreme home run upside. 3.40 on the season with a 15.2 degree average launch. Probably a little bit of luck there to keep it below 4%, but a targetable power opportunity for the Diamondbacks. I really don't think there's much opportunity to play Alec Marsh. Diamondbacks relatively low strikeout, fairly high quality overall anyway. 75-78, just an also-ran pitcher on the board where he's priced, just compares to unfavorably to a lot of better options on the board. And the same is true of the guy on the other side, 7,300, 7,000. Against an effective Royals lineup, I really want no part of a very much struggling Jordan Montgomery. He's been bad this season. A guy who used to be a good pitcher, but a mediocre DFS pitcher, is now just a bad pitcher, period. So even with the discount, even at these cheap prices, I just don't think there's much ceiling. 6.44 ERA on the season is obviously a little bit misleading, but the xFIP is at 4.58. That's bad. A 1.68 whip on 15.1% strikeouts, 7.7% walks. There's a lot of hits in there. Let's see what the BABIP against is. Oof. 356 batting average on balls in play against. That'll explain some of your bad luck. That'll explain the difference between that dramatically inflated ERA and that xFIP. But that xFIP, even if this was a true number, if this was over here, you'd be like, that's still a pretty mediocre season from Jordan Montgomery. Not striking anybody out, just pitching to a lot of contact this year, which is what's leading to that high BABIP. I really don't think he's all that playable against a pretty good Royals squad that is also very low strikeout. So we're just looking at bats on both sides here. Let's see if we got the Royals lineup in. We do? Hey, look who's in the leadoff spot. It's Garrett Hampson today. They've done something different. Congratulations, Kansas City. Well, it is an upgrade. 305 on base for the season from Garrett Hampson. When the other options you've been using in that spot are sub 300, I guess that's got to count as an upgrade. They're at least catching on to the idea that different players need to try their hand at that spot. And Hampson did have a 348 on base last year over 253 opportunities. 275, 348, 378. He created runs directly at league average. He's probably a pretty reasonable guy to keep in that spot for, the days that he's in the lineup. He's only made 143 plate appearances this year. Regardless, there's no stopping the core of Royals bats. Some really talented hitters here. Bobby Witt, absolute superstar. I believe he jumped to the league lead in FWAR this based on last night's performance. 18 home runs, 22 stolen bases, a 251 ISO, a 166 WRC plus on the season. It's been absolutely phenomenal. One of the top, if not the top, shortstop investments in all of fantasy baseball and on this slate most specifically. Vinny Pasquantino for 45-31 has 11 home runs. The great ability to put bat on ball, hit ball hard. That's all we really want to buy at first base for those prices. We'll take the results as they come. They've been mixed so far this season, but the quality of the hitter is extreme. Really like Vinny at first base. Sal for 47-34, high-end catcher bat, 18 home runs, a 196 ISO, creating runs 21% better than average. Tremendous for the investment, 4,700, 3,400, not even expensive on either site. Hunter Renfroe, 35-29, got involved a little bit again last night. 9 home runs on the season, a 170 ISO. Not completely dead after all. Had a really slow start to the season, but maybe catching on a little bit. So back to life, definitely playable at 35-29, hitting in the heart of the lineup if you're going to the Royals against a really scuffling Jordan Montgomery. Quality right-handed bat with a lot of historic home runs. Not like the home runs were historic, like they're historic in that they happened in the past. But hopefully you get 1 or 2 in the future still. Freddie Furman, I've talked about him a few times. Whenever he's in the lineup, he's a playable piece. The only issue with it on DraftKings is you got to skip Sal to get to him. On FanDuel, you got to go catcher util to play those 2 players together. But he's a very capable bat. 291, 342, 408, creating runs 8% better than average with 4 home runs on the board. Low strikeout, medium walk, puts the ball in play quite a bit. Very cheap for 3,100, 2,600 as a positional filler if you can't afford to get to Sal in your Royal stack. It's not a bad alternative at catcher. It's just more of one where I can't afford Sal, so I'll use him. Not I'm going to use him instead of Sal deliberately. Although that would be a differentiator, obviously. Michael Garcia for 44-29 has 6 home runs, 23 steals. A lot of mediocrity in there, but there is a lot of talent in that player. Hopefully the low pressure environment hitting 7th starts to catch on and starts to put him back on the path toward being a good bat. Nick Lofton, Dayron Blanco. Blanco, 18 stolen bases in 93 plate appearances. Probably shouldn't be ignored. Anytime he's in the lineup, he's just not at all consistent. A 286 on base is atrocious. The fact that he's stolen 18 bases, despite that on base in just 93 plate appearances, makes it all the more impressive. When he's on base, he's going. It's just that he's not on base all that much. But I probably prefer him to, let's say, Lofton at least. Lofton at 192, 291, 246 with no counting stats. From the Diamondbacks side, Corbin Carroll up to 6 home runs and 19 stolen bases, now slashing 209, 299, 336. Has not paid off anybody who took him in the first round in fantasy drafts. Has not paid off anybody who bought him cheap based on his struggles sometime in June. Has not helped at all this season, but maybe some recent signs of life. I don't think we're approaching anywhere near getting back to last year's quality, but maybe we have an okay final, 300 plate appearances of the season, 250 plate appearances of the season. Maybe we get a little bit out of him. That said, based on numbers I saw on other sites, he's going to be crushingly popular in this Diamondbacks lineup. He was their most popular hitter by far, which to me, given the season-long absolute struggles, doesn't make a ton of sense outside of the fact that he's a lefty hitting leadoff against Alec Marsh ahead of all the hitters that I want that are showing all that power. But if I can differentiate a Diamondback stack just by going to, say, Lourdes Gurriel, Gabriel Moreno, Eugenio Suarez in one of those spots as my fourth man on FanDuel, as one of my 5 guys on DraftKings, and just leave Carroll out, maybe it burns me, but it burns me in a way that like so many people had it. Would it have made an extreme difference if I had it? Probably not. So I can pivot my way around Carroll, and I think that's to your advantage today. That said, based on last year, there's phenomenal ceiling there on any given slate, and he's going up against a nothing opponent at pitcher. So if you don't mind the individual ownership, I think he's in play at those prices. Ketel Marte, 54.37, reasonably high priced, 20 home runs on the season, a 221 ISO, 140 WRC plus, having a monster year at second base, and honestly could be a little bit more expensive. Jock Peterson, again, the $4,600 on DraftKings is a very, very good price. I think $2,600 relative to the FanDuel cap beats it. That is a killer spot value-wise. 13 home runs on the season in just 282 opportunities, a 222 ISO, 11.7% barrels, 45% hard hits, born to hit home runs against mediocre righties. I love Jock Peterson today. Christian Walker, 52.36, 12.53 to lead the team in the home run model. He's got 22 on the year, 225 ISO, a strong slash line, a 129 WRC plus, tremendous premium contact numbers, excellent option at first base for the money. Lourdes Gurriel for 42.28, another premium bat who is underpriced in this lineup. Getting Jock and Gurriel for these prices makes this such an easy stack to afford while staying high-end pitcher or high-end second stack. Really like the way these guys are priced today. Gurriel's got a 40.3% hard hit. He strikes out just 20% of the time while walking only 3.6. So all of these balls are put in play. Slashing 259, 289, 409. The front end of the triple slash could be better, but the 13 home runs have appeal. 150 ISO could be a little bit better. 94 WRC plus. I get why he's priced like this, but he is a guy who's been more effective than this over time and is not really far off the marks for anything that he does. So I'm still a buyer on Gurriel at these prices in conjunction with some of these other bats in stacks. Gabriel Moreno turned it on a little bit recently. He's up to a 339 on base, a 103 WRC plus. Long way to go for quality in terms of the consistency of average or hitting for power or anything, but he's been more involved lately. He only costs 3,600, 2,700, solid 40.1% hard hits, and just strikes out 14.8% of the time while getting on base via walks. An interesting enough catcher for your money. Eugenio Suarez is on a bit of a tear. He's got 11 home runs on the season now. 383 opportunities. Still another player with a very, very long way to go to make this look like it was a good season, but at least the power has finally arrived. Historically has been more of a second half player than a first half, if that means anything to you. Very, very cheap at third base, and another player who I think is going to be a key to differentiating Diamondback stacks. For very cheap pricing, that's a good differentiation piece. That's probably a lower owned one, and that's probably even lower owned. So there's ways to make Diamondbacks lineups a little bit different today. Jake McCarthy and Geraldo Perdomo, just mix and match options late. McCarthy gets on base at a good clip. He's got 13 steals, a 363 on base, and his creator runs 14% better than average. He's just more of a correlated scoring guy. I would have liked to have seen this lineup with Jake McCarthy up here and Corbin Carroll down here. Quite honestly. Just given the skill sets, why wouldn't you have McCarthy lead off? Makes sense to me. Maybe the Kansas City Royals phone this lineup in for them. Perdomo is just a, okay option at the end of the lineup for a very cheap price. I don't love occupying shortstop with him, though. Not getting on base at an extreme level. Hasn't provided any counting stats at all so far this season. So, not great. Diamondbacks bats, Royals bats, neither pitcher. I don't think we're going to either one of these pitchers. You can make the argument for Cooper Criswell since he's only 5,800 on DraftKings. What did he give us last time? Yeah, he went 6 in his most recent start. It was against Kansas City. He gave up 5 runs, but only 2 earned. Struck out just 1, walked 2, gave up a homer, faced 29 hitters, gave up 8 hits, over 6, took the loss. Had only gone 4 and change in 3 of his 4 starts prior to that one, and only 5 innings facing 19 hitters in the other one from May through June, and then was out for a few weeks. That's why I was checking the depth of innings there. I'd be concerned that we're not getting more than 5, considering we're coming off the break. And he's pretty low end anyway. It's just that super targetable Rockies team on the other side, but probably more often than not, you're just playing with fire by playing Cooper Criswell, even for 5,800. 20.2% strikeout on the season, a 4.03 ERA with a matching 4 on the nose xFIP. Stuff Plus likes the arsenal. He's been okay at limiting power, premium contact, elevation. Maybe a few darts for that money, but again, we're talking about darts from here on the board. There's not a ton of separation between that projection and, say, this projection. But there's a little. So it's a matter of what you do with that 58, with that dramatic savings. But don't expect much if you roster this. Don't play it here. Don't play him at all. I do not see an opportunity for Ty Blach. Even lefty against the Red Sox, it doesn't matter. You're talking about a guy with an 11.9% strikeout rate this season, 5.46 ERA with a 4.66 xFIP, giving up a 1.58 whip, 6.3% swinging strikes, giving up an 11% barrel rate, 41.1% hard hits, 90.3 miles an hour of exit velo. So another one, 2, 3 of our 3 indicators, all looking toward big-time power. 2 of the Red Sox above the magic number. Some of the other key bats in the mid-range. They're not the best power-hitting squad in the world, but they don't have to just hit home runs. It's a lot of guys that can drive the ball in this lineup, a lot of guys who are doing so currently for doubles power, exploit the Coors Field, the size of Coors Field, and the doubles and the triples that lurk in Coors Field in addition to home run upside. So love the Red Sox bats here. I think they're easy enough to get to. With expectations of guys like Jamie Westbrook, Romy Gonzalez being in the lineup again against the lefty. They get pretty cheap pretty quickly, and they've got a ton of multi-position baked in here. So just including one of these 3 guys can help differentiate a lineup, can help lower the average cost, and provides a bunch of different options as far as what you're playing them with because of those positional flex opportunities. If this is the Red Sox lineup, Jarren Duran against this lefty, no concerns at all. 12 home runs, 22 steals, a 130 WRC plus for him. Hitting the ball very hard, getting on base via the walk a little bit, but getting on base at a 346 clip overall in general is terrific. 22% strikeouts, 7.8% walks. It's been tremendous this season. Rob Refsnyder is just paid to hit lefties and do so pretty well. Overall for the season, 298, 389, 450. He's been very effective when he's in the lineup, 4,300, 3,100. Wish he still had some infield eligibility to go with that. Just an outfielder these days, but I'll take it for the money. He's been effective in this spot, 9.7% barrels, 45.2% hard hits. Definitely on that list of Red Sox who could drive the ball for a double, create some scoring events, create some correlated scoring. Don't dislike Rob Refsnyder off the top at this point. Connor Wong, 4,400, 3,500, appropriately priced on FanDuel. Not so where you actually need catchers on DraftKings. 9 home runs, a killer slash line, 126 WRC plus. If he's hitting third against a very mediocre lefty in Coors Field, why the hell is he priced only at 4,400? I don't get it. Did they just forget he's on the team and forget to raise his price for Coors Field? He's been fantastic this year. Doesn't make sense. Rafi Devers, 6,300, 4,500. A little bit of a tax on FanDuel, less of a tax on DraftKings. 23 home runs on the season. Yeah, he's worse against lefties, but not against soft-tossing lefties who have an 11.9% strikeout rate. just doesn't matter at a certain point. Tyler O'Neill for 57, 42, 18 home runs on the season, a 250 ISO. Going to be crazy popular on this slate, but deservingly so. Tons of power, a little bit of speed, great ability to get on base, get correlated, provide all kinds of upside across the board. Masataka Yoshida probably will be a lot lower owned than a lot of his teammates, and he's playable. 4,200, 3,200. That's a good hitter who has kind of underperformed 205 plate appearances, including an injury stretch in this season. Was very good last year. Has the ability to drive the ball. Very low strikeout, medium walk, so he's putting a lot of balls in play. Again, in Coors Field, just let the dimensions take over. Coors Field has more square footage of playing surface than any other ballpark in the league. Romy Gonzalez at 4,000, 2,900 against the lefty. Probably going to be in the lineup with all that multi-position. Hits the ball very hard. 44.4% hard hit rate this year. 42.4 in a medium sample last year. Just a 133 ISO, 96 WRC+. The results have been mixed over 91 plate appearances, but he's gotten involved, and he costs nothing at Coors Field. Ceddanne Rafaela scoring a ton of runs, driving some in, stolen 13 bags, hit 11 home runs, 165 ISO, 86 WRC+. He hasn't been tremendous or consistent, but he's got good numbers in all four of these categories, and that's where a lot of DFS scoring actually comes from. So just the ability to be involved to that level is worth something here. And again, another player, 3,300 in Coors Field with 4 position eligibility on FanDuel, just 46 shortstop or outfield. Not ideal positioning on DraftKings, but you can plug him into the outfield for 46. It's actually a little higher priced now that I'm thinking about it. I'd probably rather just have Ref Snyder in the outfield for 43 hitting second than Rafaela for 46. They raised his price a little bit higher than I was expecting. But still, he's, again, been providing a lot of DFS scoring ability, even though it's not necessarily accounted for by WRC+, not necessarily hitting for a ton of power outside of the 11 home runs. But I think he's playable. $3,000 Jamie Westbrook at second, 2,500 second base and outfield on the FanDuel slate. Slashing just 200, 257, 467 over 36 opportunities, but he's already hit 2 home runs. He's got 13% barrels. Mix and match piece for a very cheap price to round out a lineup. On the Rocks side, we did have that Red Sox lineup. I didn't realize that went confirmed. I think it's exactly what's in there. Yep. That is the confirmed Red Sox lineup. I just grab it so I've got it in there for later when I go update. 5:30, we're making decent time. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you've never done that before. I don't know what you're waiting for. Definitely, especially as we come into football season, we're going to be doing shows all over the place probably. And I don't mean like there's going to be a million shows through the week. I just mean that the all over the place means what boils down to probably one football show each week again as a marathon. It's going to be wildly unpredictable as to when that happens and what time. I am actually hoping to do a little bit more of a sane approach to football this year where we actually do break it up like I was threatening to all last year. Try and do like overview Monday or Tuesday, quarterbacks Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday, positionally go through it. But I get so caught up, you guys know how I talk about these things, that we're going to try and do a quarterback show and we're going to talk about every position on the slate. We're going to do 3 hours anyway, and then we're just going to come back and do the same thing each day. So I don't know. Try and get it figured out in a more sane approach this year. But the point is, hit the subscribe so you know when everything's going on. Some stuff coming up on the site, and hopefully get some more content out to you guys. And as we get into multiple seasons going on, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hop into the Discord if you're not already in there. I'll drop a link in the chat. A lot of fun through the evening watching the slates unfold. A lot of chat during the afternoon, talking, answering questions, so on and so forth. Jim Parrish asks, what do you think of a combo of Bush and Suzuki? I like it a lot. Love those two hitters specifically from that Cubs lineup, and it's probably 2 of their 3 highest end bats. I would add Ian Happ if I was going to make a little 3-man, and it's just I think they're 2, 3, 4 in that lineup. But yeah, Jim, I like that combo, that pairing a lot. Mama, top bats on the Rockies. Good question, good timing. We're about to do it. Oh look, Chris Bryant's back. Good for him. For 4,000, 2,600, I'll probably, if I was building Rockies, it would probably be difficult for me to avoid just going back to old Mr. Chris Bryant there. But it's been a really rough 101 plate appearances going back 2-3 months ago. 186, 307, 279. It's been a rough couple of years for Mr. Bryant since signing in Colorado. I don't know if he signed that in the blood of some witch's children and she cursed him for life or what happened, but he's been injured. He's been bad. I don't know what's going on with him out there. Probably could benefit from getting traded away from Colorado at the deadline. Maybe he will. They don't need him at all for what they're trying to do. But he'd be one of them. Just, even with the struggles, I would hope that would render him somewhat underowned. The easy and obvious option is Brenton Doyle. 4,900, 3,700 hitting cleanup today. He's got 16 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 113 WRC plus. Tovar's also been pretty good. 4,400, 3,700 at shortstop, 16 homers, 195 ISO, 102 WRC plus. Gets a little trickier from there. Elias Diaz dropping a few spots to the 6th slot in the lineup, 3,900, 2,900. I still do think a lot of that bat at catcher, so if you're on DK building Rocky stacks, he'd be a priority bat for me. The true priorities, ignoring just my affection for Chris Bryant, would probably be like priority 1, priority 2, and then priority 3 for me, and just go 3-man on DK. And then if I wanted to stretch it, any two of Charlie, Rogers, and Bryant would be playable, but I would probably go one of those 3 and then Michael Talia. You get a lot of inconsistency out of Talia. Sub Mendoza over his 209 plate appearances, just a 263 on base and 88 WRC plus, but he's hit 16 home runs in those 209 plate appearances. He's got a 287 ISO. He's got a 16.9% barrel, 53.2% hard hit. The guy can absolutely mash. He's going up against a gettable pitcher. So I like Talia there. It would probably be 1, 2, 3. I would say 4 with Chris Bryant and then Talia, 5 for me. Or actually, Talia is probably the true 4 priority. And then the 1 of 3 from Blackman, Rogers, Bryant is the 5th priority. Rogers is having an okay year. He's hitting the ball hard, seeing mixed results for it. 261, 306, 386, just a 79 WRC plus, 7 home runs. But I like the fact that he's driving the ball a little. I do think there's some upside going forward there if he can pull things together a little bit more. Jake Cave is a mix and match outfielder over time. Not a ton of quality there. 77 WRC plus. Aaron Schunk at the bottom of the lineup, just mix and match level at third base. 2,400, 2,500 across sites. If I'm playing him, it's probably just second base plug in for a cheap price on FanDuel. I don't love him at third for 2,400 on DraftKings. Red Sox bats, Rockies bats. Closer together than you'd think. Astros A's, we do not have lineups for this one yet. Jake Bloss going for 7,200 on DK, 6,700 on your FanDuel slate. 2 starts, 4 innings in the most recent one against Miami. Gave up 2 earned runs on 4 hits, struck out 4, walked 1, gave up a homer. First start, 3 2/3 against Baltimore. Gave up 2 earned on 6 hits, struck out 2, walked 1. Not great results. Amounts to a 4.70 ERA, a 4.50 xFIP, 16.7% strikeouts in his limited 7 2/3. In the minors, over 44 2/3 in Double-A. He had a 1.61 ERA, but a 3.98 xFIP as a 23-year-old. And had a 21.2% strikeout with a 7.9% walk. Just made 1 start at AAA, not really relevant, 4 innings. Struck out 3, 1 hit. Probably not fully cooked yet, if he's ever really even going to get there. Coming into the season, he was there. Hey, he's actually a decently ranked prospect by Fangraphs. He was their 2nd overall prospect in the 100th, or their 2nd prospect in the 100th overall on Fangraphs board. MLB's pipeline had him at 9 organizationally and unranked overall. That feels more correct to me. I'm not sure where Fangraph's numbers are coming from. I guess he did have high strikeout numbers in high A, but very high walk numbers. I don't know. I don't think there's a ton of quality. It's a great matchup, obviously, against the A's, but I see a little bit more life on the A's side than on the Jake Bloss side. At 7,200 and 6,700, maybe he's a dart. You get him from like here on the board. It's like a mix and match caliber pitcher. 67 on FanDuel is aggressively cheap. 72 on DK is very workable. He's in the bargain bin, mostly based on matchup, not a ton of individual quality. Osvaldo Bido on the other side, 20.3% strikeouts over 18 and a third, only one start so far. He went 3 innings in bulk relief against Philadelphia 2 outings ago, struck out 2, gave up a hit, no runs, faced 9 hitters, went just an inning in his most recent outing. That was on the 19th, 4 days ago, struck out 1, walked 3. Probably not even getting to these levels of output. I think that's a 3 and change inning, 3.5 inning projection. Getting some upside for Pop on the Astros side. I actually went in and normalized it a little bit based on some of his aggressively high home run numbers allowed through the minors, because he hasn't allowed a home run in just 18 and a third this year. Last year in 50 and 2/3, he had a 1.69 at the major league level. So I kind of split the difference, normalized it a little bit, but left it a little bit low so that the Astros wouldn't pop through the top of the model artificially. And I think we're about where we want to be. Jordan Alvarez just below the magic number at 9.43, but nobody else all that close to it. 6.94 for Altuve, 5.97 for Alex Bregman. Feels about right. I think the Astros are very playable given the potential for run creation against a fairly low-end pitcher who has a ton of walks in his ledger in a small sample this year. Last year, struggled with walks at 8.9%, didn't really strike anybody out at 20.3%, didn't allow a ton of home runs, again, in that major league sample last year, but in the minors had a history of allowing pretty decent home run numbers. 5.86 ERA and a 4.94 xFIP last year, so targetable enough pitcher for me, not really on the board at 6,000, 6,200 against a pretty good Astros lineup. Looking at the bats, starting on the visiting squad, Jose Altuve, 53-36. Great season so far, 14 homers, 15 steals, creating runs 30% better than average. If you're playing Astros, you're not skipping Jose Altuve at second base. 44-32 is very reasonable for a Alex Bregman, who's a much improved version than we saw in the first few weeks of the season or the first couple months. He's up to 12 home runs, 152 ISO, creating runs 6% better than average. Still needs to improve the power numbers, still needs to improve the contact in terms of the quality of contact, but the frequency at 13.4% strikeouts, 7.4% walks, you can't argue with that. Jordan for just 55 on DK, a little bit underpriced. 41 is correct on FanDuel. 20 home runs, 245 ISO, 300, 386, 546. Fantastic hitter. Every lineup of Astros needs a Jordan Alvarez in it. Jainer Diaz for 4,000, 2,900, a good catcher with a very effective slash line, 103 WRC+. Cheap, doesn't hit for a ton of power, but drives the ball effectively with a 45.1% hard hit and has more power upside than he's shown, has the ability to hit home runs. He's got 8 on the year. John Singleton, mediocre, 2,500, 2,900, a lefty bat with a little bit of thunder in it, 7 home runs over 268, but just a 115 ISO and 96 WRC+. No real consistency, a lot of strikeouts. Jeremy Pena's mediocre, 8 home runs, 11 steals is okay. The slash line is all right. He's creating runs 2% better than average. He's not bad. He puts the ball in play quite a bit, 16.2% strikeouts and 4.4% walks, but doesn't hit it all that hard. 4,000, 2,900. He's cheap, but that's probably about where he should be priced. Jake Myers, Joey Loperfido, and Trey Cabbage at the bottom of the lineup. Myers has 11 home runs and 7 stolen bases. He's created runs 4% better than average and over 309. He's been the most appealing of their late lineup bats. 9.4% barrels and 40.8% hard hits is appealing. I like him better than the other two options. Loperfido's supposed to be a high-end rookie. He's only made 107 plate appearances. Been pretty inconsistent over that stretch, and he's gotten inconsistent opportunities, so it doesn't do him any justice. He was hitting for a ton of power before they called him up earlier in the season. Mixed opportunity. I don't think he's gotten the ability to really just get going in a true sense, given the inconsistency of plate appearances. And then Mr. Cabbage at the bottom of the lineup, just a mix and match caliber player. Lawrence Butler on an absolute tear over the last 30 days or so. 242, 313, 442 overall, but a 200 ISO, 9 home runs, 6 steals, a 117 WRC plus, over 211 opportunities, 12.1% barrels, and 50% hard hits on the season. Not a bad option for just 3,700, 3,200 against Jake Bloss. Miguel Andujar is hitting for average, decent slash line, 115 WRC plus. There is power in there somewhere, but it hasn't really come out this season. He's more focused this year on low walks and low strikeouts and just putting the ball in play. It's been effective for him, but that could crater at any time if he just a couple atom balls, couple of bad luck days, and those numbers change pretty quickly. JJ Bleday for 4,031 has 12 home runs, a 200 ISO. Brent Rooker has 22 home runs and a 281 ISO. Rooker at 54.38, their most expensive player, but still affordable for given the numbers and the quality they've put up this year. He's giving you star caliber numbers, so those aren't far off the mark prices at all. And 4,100 for Bleday helps average that down. You get a strong ISO and a very positive run creation mark out of him. You get a very strong ISO and 18 home runs in the track record so far out of Shea Langoliers over 328 opportunities. He's just low end for everything else. He's not very consistent. He crushes the ball when he connects, but he doesn't connect all that frequently. 28.4% strikeouts doesn't help anything either. Abraham Toro, 34-27, mix and match part, 6 home runs, 3 steals, and 299 opportunities, just a 96 WRC plus. Seth Brown has been bad, but has better career numbers than these. You're just kind of buying him on faith at 26-29. He's very cheap for previously a good lefty bat late in the lineup. This year, not so much. 4,000, 3,000 for Zach Geloff. Another player really struggling for any kind of consistency, 197, 261, 364 slash line. But 12 home runs, 12 steals, and 324 opportunities. We're not anywhere near off the mark from the 14-14 that he put up in 300 chances last year. It's just the slash line is way uglier. So we need to pull things together, but we're still getting our counting stats, and he's very fairly priced for what he's doing this season. Max Schumann getting a little bit of opportunity here with, the rookie who came up and then immediately got injured. Schumann's been all right. 260, 355, 379, creating runs 17% better than average, 6 home runs, 9 steals. You could do worse than using him as a wraparound play if he's hitting 9th or using him from anywhere up in this territory. Mix and match parts through the A's. Astros bats, A's bats. Neither pitcher really. If you're going to one of these pitchers, it's probably Jake Bloss, and it's probably only on DraftKings. Trey likes the Rooker Butler double pick there for the A's. I like it. Jim, have fun back at work, buddy. Appreciate you. Happy to answer the questions anytime, pal. You're probably already gone, but enjoy the rest of work. Dennis calling for one 7-hour football show from 4 a.m. to 11 on Sunday. That's honestly more doable than you would think. You probably know. You know what my hours are with those Saturday into Sunday football slates. That was more so the case at Awesemo than it was last year. It was a little bit more sane doing things for rotoscouts last year. But yeah, we can definitely get into some weird schedules for something like that. It would be a fun way to do it. But that would lead us directly to competing with the big shows. Where I would myself be like, you should probably go watch those shows Sunday mornings. At least 2, Monty, probably 3. They need to be the team that acquires Lubob, and then 2 good on base types. But they've got Robles has been interesting for them, who they just added. I could see him sticking a little bit. Tyler Locklear should be up if he's not up already because they DFA'd Ty France. He's an interesting rookie. See what we get out of him. But that could offset a couple of those potential acquisitions. But yeah, they need to load up at the deadline for sure because, as I've said all year, you can't have this pitching staff and not try to help them out with some bats. It's just unfair. It's just unfair to the fans. It's bad business. It's just not the right way to go about it. They should have made some moves by now. They already lost their lead in the West, but just they've gotten nothing from their offense this year. And it's a shame because this pitching staff is elite. Yeah, one's not going to get him there. Unless it's like one and you guarantee me that Julio's coming back. Maybe then. But yeah, it's been tough. Jose Soriano, one of the buzziest pitchers of the day. He's got a 3.71 ERA on the season, over 15 starts, 87 and a third, 3.92 xFIP, 10.4% swinging strike rate is pretty appealing against a team with a monster strikeout problem. It only amounts to a 20% overall strikeout rate for him this season, 9.4% walks to go with that. He is not easy to say he's going to have a good day. There's definitely some warts here. Last year in 42 innings of relief, he had a 30.3% strikeout rate, so he can ramp it up, can find some additional swinging strikes when he needs to. If he gets in trouble, needs to punch his way out, he's got that ability, but he walks a ton of hitters. Last year it was 12.4%, despite, again, decent run numbers, good swinging strike numbers, great strike throwing numbers out of the bullpen. This year those have diminished as he's trying to ease up a little bit and get through more innings. It's had a little bit of a premium contact issue, but it comes on a negative 0.1 degree average launch angle, so it's not problematic. As we've talked about with a lot of these launch control guys, if you're hitting the ball directly into the ground, it really doesn't matter how hard you hit it. I mean, maybe some of those do lead to base hits getting through the infield, but that's a much smaller problem than giving up this kind of premium contact, that kind of hard hit and exit velo on a extreme fly ball trajectory. So the 2.22 home run rate is pretty believable here. And again, throwing him up against a team without all that much home run ability outside of, maybe your Cal Raleighs, not really worried about Soriano in terms of that. It's just manage your walks. Don't give up sequencing, which is honestly kind of easy to do against this team. Limit sequencing, limit their ability to continue an inning and get a bunch of guys on base and create opportunities. I like his chances to succeed. Matchup-wise, you couldn't really ask for better. He's going to be popular, no doubt about it. 8,100 on FanDuel, 7,600 on DraftKings. Going to be easily the top value pitcher of the day. And there are other opportunities, but he's probably the highest end between him, John Gray, and whoever the hell the third one was. Woods Richardson. Logan Gilbert's just really good and has a tremendous matchup against the Angels. 2.79 ERA, a 3.45 xFIP, just a 5% walk rate against nearly a 25% strikeout rate, over 132 and a third. Gives you tremendous depth, gives you a fantastic shot at the quality start. Probably a pretty decent shot at the win bonus with the Angels in town. I think the Mariners probably eke this one out as they've done throughout the season. Last time out for Gilbert, faced this Angels squad, went 7 innings, gave up just 2 hits, no runs, and struck out 9. I like his opportunity to just come out and completely replicate that game. 7 2/3 to start before that. Struck out 7 against the Pods, but gave up 3 earned runs on 4 hits. 4 earned runs to Baltimore the start before that, over 5 1/3, but had a stretch before that of quality. 2 8-inning starts in there, gave up no runs in either one of them. So 16 innings of shutout ball, 6 hits. 1 was against Texas, 1 was against Miami. Mediocre opponents, but playable. I got like a pet hair. Lot of depth through the season. He's got, 3 8-inning starts, multiple starts into the 8th inning, and then a handful of 7-inning starts. He's only failed to complete the 6th. In a year where, and an era where we talk about guys, 5 innings and thank you very much. One out of his 20 starts this year, only one time a 4-inning start against the Twins in which he gave up 8 earned runs on 9 hits, his worst start of the year. That was the only time he didn't at least pitch into the 6th inning. He's only failed to complete 6, in addition to that one, 2 other times. 5 1/3 against Baltimore in that 4-run game 3 starts ago, and then all the way back on April 5th, 5 2/3 against Milwaukee, gave up 4 earned runs in that one as well. Has completed 6 innings in every other start. Has a quality start in almost every one of those completed 6-inning games. Logan Gilbert is terrific. Really good option today. 10,000 on DK, 10.8 on FanDuel. You're paying through the nose to get him, but totally worth it against a bad Angels team. Mediocre at best. Anthony Rendon at the top of the Angels lineup is a nothing hitter these days. He doesn't strike out a ton. He still draws a little bit of walks, but non-threatening. 302 on base, 4 stolen bases. Congratulations. 68 WRC+. Nolan Shanuel, another very non-threatening hitter. He's got 9 home runs in 378 plate appearances. Nothing impressive about that. A 117 ISO, 96 WRC plus. Not hitting for average, not getting on base consistently, not driving the ball. He's just low strikeout. Taylor Ward's striking out a lot. He's also in a big rut. He's got 14 home runs. He's down to league average run creation at 100 WRC plus. He's cheap for Taylor Ward for his talent, but it's been pretty bad lately. 3,200, 2,600 for Willie Calhoun, who's slashing 255, 322, 394, 101 WRC plus. He's hit 4 home runs. There's a reason he's never really caught on at the major league level, despite being a low strikeout option. Doesn't do a lot when he makes contact. Weak contact abounds for Willie Calhoun. Logan O'Hoppy's probably their best hitter right now. Him and Zach Neto are the only 2 guys doing much with the bat. 14 home runs for O'Hoppy, 13 home runs for Neto. He's also stolen 16 bases. The catcher's got a 124 WRC plus. The infielder has a 110 WRC plus. In between them, you get a very mediocre Mickey Moniak. Nice alliteration, though. And then you get Joe Adell and Luis Renifo at the bottom of the lineup. Renifo's got 6 home runs and 22 steals. He's an effective player, 126 WRC plus. More of a correlated scoring guy who should probably hit further up the lineup than he's hitting right now. And then Adell's just maddeningly inconsistent. He's hit 15 home runs and stolen 13 bags. He's got a ton of ability, but never ever has put anything together in any kind of consistent stretch. You just get those ridiculous 2-week runs that he goes on and then just immediately cools off for a month and a half. 85 WRC plus on the season. Some playable parts, but nothing really comes together from the Angels. Low end stack, maybe a 3-man for cheap is your best you can do, but it's just not a good target for pitchers. So even in a contrarian sense, I don't think you really want much at all of the Angels today. And with the Mariners, it's just really tough. As I said, Victor Robles has been really interesting since joining this team 86 plate appearances ago. He's already got 11 stolen bases, getting on at a 398 clip and driving the ball with some consistency. Formerly a top 5 prospect in all of baseball going back to 2019, like we looked at yesterday and highlighted basically his entire career. He's actually, pretty playable piece at 2,400, 2,600 with a little bit of correlated scoring upside. If you choose to target Soriano, I think that's viable. I think that's probably actually advisable. If you have some Soriano, grab some hedge stacks. If you're not using Soriano, maybe consider the Mariners and just target that extreme ownership on, an SP2 value pitcher for sure of the day and a lot of justification for playing him, but overall a somewhat mediocre pitcher. Out of all the opponents the Mariners could possibly have, he lands, somewhere in the middle as far as being targetable. So I think some hedge or some just, some anti-field bats from the Mariners could work. Victor Robles, top priority. 3,600, 2,500 for Josh Rojas if he's leading off. It's a mix and match play from that spot. 317 on base, 4 homers, 6 steals. Capable of getting involved against a mediocre righty, but not great. Julio for 4,800 and Cal Raleigh for 4,800. Both are cheap for their power upside, for their counting stat upside. Neither one has been good or reliable this year, but we are above average for run creation. 101 WRC plus for Julio, 104 for Cal Raleigh. Julio up to 263, 315, 372, 11 homers in 18 steals, but a lot of mediocrity. Both guys do still hit the ball pretty hard, so you got that going for you at least. You're not really skipping either one of those guys if you're building a lot of Mariner stacks. Jorge Polanco's just been bad this year. 202, 286, 298, a 73 WRC plus, 6 homers, 2 steals. Mitch Garver, a second catcher in the lineup, does have a lot of righty power. 12 home runs, but 168, 285, 343, 15 points worse than average for run creation. Ouch. Luke Raley, good year last year. Mixed results this year, 233, 294, 15. Is 3 points better than average for run creation. Does have 11 homers and 6 steals. Capable guy, can drive the ball. One of your higher priority Mariners bats, honestly. Dylan Moore has been in a major slump since a little bit of an outbreak that had everybody talking about how good he was. 8 home runs, 17 stolen bases, 192 ISO. If you think I'm still pissed off that he hit 2 home runs that day, I said it wasn't any good. I am. Jason Vossler at the bottom of the lineup, 2,800 on DraftKings, not available on FanDuel. Medium 5.04 in the home run model. Let's take a quick look at Vossler. I need warp speed now, Vossler. If you give me that movie reference, I'll be impressed. 20 home runs in AAA this year, but he's 30 years old. I knew we knew this name. He's been around a little bit. 111 plate appearances in San Francisco in 2022 up in the show. Hit 4 home runs, 265, 342, 469 with a 204 ISO. Last year for Cincinnati, made 65 plate appearances, hit 3 home runs, 161, 200, 371 with a 210 ISO. Definitely the ability to drive the ball. Again, in 393 opportunities in AAA this year, has 20 home runs already. 363 in AAA last year, had 20. 398 in AAA 3 years ago, had 18. So a decent, solid medium power type of a lefty at third base. But again, 30 years old. If he was going to be anybody, he would have been here by now. Not a priority. Is a mix and match play. He's not available on FanDuel. Did they call him up instead of Tyler Locklear? Is that what happened here? I guess this isn't the confirmed lineup yet either. Yeah, it looks like they called him up instead of Locklear. That doesn't really make sense. Maybe they just didn't want to. I don't know. Locklear was already up this season, so it wouldn't be an option issue. I don't know. I don't really get that. Logan Gilbert way up top. Jose Soriano's value next, but he's going to be popular. Mariners bats, and then I don't really need the Angels bats at all. Last game up, dead on 6 o'clock. Let me get through this one, and then we'll get everything updated up on the website, up at rotoscouts.com, where you can find all the projections, the home run picks, the top stacks, the pitching projections, and what's the other thing? The power index. Power index is showing a hell of a lot of quality for the San Francisco Giants today in terms of home run ability. All of that, I'll remind you, is just averaging out the individual home run opportunities. So it doesn't always directly lead to this is necessarily a good stack. It just means somebody on this team is likely to hit a home run today, or maybe 2 guys are likely to hit a home run. But as always, you do need, additional support from guys just getting on base and filling things out. And that's where the Giants are mediocre. They can deliver. They're very cheap. So I do think there is some upside, and you do have a lineup that typically will have some of the power strung through it, rather than like the Phillies yesterday. Had 3 guys all above the magic number. Bryce Harper did hit a home run, but all 3 of them were in the top 3 spots. You get 2 guys above the magic number here and a very good bat in Lamont Wade, but then you do get some high-quality 7s and high 9s down through the lineup. So it's a lineup where you can stagger a little bit. You can buy power late to drive in some runs in the middle, and so on and so forth. So it's a usable team that I do believe could find some sequencing against Landon Knack. He's been okay. 3.23 ERA with a 4.21 xFIP, 22.6% strikeouts and 6.3% walks, inducing a 10.7% swinging. This is why I said I think he's got the tools to be a decent pitcher. I applauded the pick when Emac made it in the Dynasty draft. He's just had a little bit of an issue with home runs and premium contact this year. On a 20-degree average launch, he's giving up 47.7% hard hits. Remember, we're typically looking for 40 as you've got a hard hit problem. So he's got an extreme hard hit problem. We're typically looking for 90 miles an hour of exit velo. He's giving up 92 miles an hour of exit velo. 10.8% barrels so far. It's a matter to a 5.03% home run rate. Typically we say at 4, you've got a problem. 101.87 by Stuff Plus, though. Again, support for the idea that he's got a good arsenal of pitches. Just hasn't strung it all together yet. In his 7 starts and 8 appearances, he's given up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 home runs. 8 home runs. Only 2 games with no home runs allowed. Granted, 3 of those home runs came against Arizona 2 starts ago. He's also got some decent strikeout output in there. He's completed the 6th inning only once. He's pitched into the 6th inning only once. Not a great option at 8,076 on FanDuel. I'm really struggling seeing the quality start coming through. I think we just kind of forgo the Landon Knack shares, and it's just a matter of how much of San Francisco can come through. I made Elio Ramos the home run pick of the day, 14.98. He's one of the top ranked overall. Love the power upside from the kid, and I like the way he lined up here. I was tempted to make it Lamont Wade, but he didn't really, when I had 2 guys above the magic number and all these other guys higher than Wade, it was difficult for me to justify doing it. But you guys know I like that bat a lot. He hits the ball very hard. He gets on base at a killer clip. I definitely think he's interesting. Giants are a primo value stack at the very worst. They align pretty well. They've got some very dangerous bats. And with that hard hit problem, even if they're not hitting home runs, there's a lot of quality contact in this lineup. Look at all these guys above 40% hard hits. and most of them well above 40% hard hits. Bunch of guys in that stretch with fair samples, double-digit barrel rates, going back in time, double-digit barrel rates, high-end hard hit rates. There's a lot of quality lurking in this Giants lineup for very, very fair prices against this pitcher. And then going the other way, Jordan Hicks is all right, but he's facing the Dodgers. 3.79 ERA with a 4.16 xFIP, a little bit elevated in the 1.36 WHIP, just a 20.3% strikeout rate, 8.8% barrels. He's given up just 2.69% home runs, but the launch angle's gone up a little bit. We're up to 9.2% barrels, which is aggressive. A lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo. I think he's a little bit more threatened by these Dodgers than it might look like on paper. Doesn't look like a great option at 78-74. They're fairly low strikeout, even with their diminished bottom end and their their diminished top end and their lackluster bottom end is the way I should have said that. So I think we're just talking about bats really here. Starting from the top of the Giants, Jorge Soler for just 4,100, 3,100. I mean, that's an easy enough investment to make against a guy who's giving up this kind of contact and that kind of home run numbers. He's up to 10% barrels, 40% hard hits. That's still diminished from last season, but in a vacuum, it's all right. He's got 11 home runs and 359 chances, a 173 ISO. This is a guy who had a 262 ISO and 36 home runs last year. It's a guy who has a lot of power in his track record over time. I have tons of faith in Jorge Soler's ability to hit 2 home runs off of this pitcher. You could also put a 0 in your lineup, no doubt about it. But I'm buying the upside. Lamont Wade for just 39.26 is slashing 311, 433, 417, coming off a strong year for on-base and run creation and correlated scoring. Has a 9.8% barrel and 45.9% hard hits that align well and exceed the numbers from the last few seasons. He's been very, very good. He's an interesting player. He's creating runs 49% better than average. High-quality left-handed bat for a very cheap price at the top of the lineup against a mediocre righty. Elliot Ramos, again, home run pick of the day, mashing when he makes contact. Strikes out at a pretty high clip, draws an okay walk rate, but only costs 4,500, 3,200 across sites. Overall in 279 chances, slashing 287, 351, 502, a 215 ISO, 14 home runs. Absolutely in on that. Patty Bailey, 39.26, another very high-quality catcher. 41.1% hard hits, draws walks, doesn't strike out that much. 7 home runs. He's got a little bit of power, just a 141 ISO, but he's getting on at a 351 clip and creating runs 22% better than average. Premium catcher bat when he's hitting cleanup, and he's quite frequently in that kind of a spot in the lineup. He's a switch hitter to boot, helps out. Mikey Conforto and Mike Yastrzemski, a pair of quality lefties with a ton of premium contact, both over 10% barrels, both over 40 and change percent hard hits. 10 home runs for Conforto, 8 home runs in fewer plate appearances for Yaz so far this season. They create a very interesting trio of bats on either side of Matt Chapman and all his right-handed power. 11.8% barrels, 45.6% hard hits for Chapman, 13 homers, 11 steals, 173 ISO. All 3 guys creating runs above average this season despite pretty mediocre averages, pretty mediocre on-base numbers. There's 3 quality bats there. That's not a bad trio of hitters. It's not a bad 3-man group to put together with like Wade and Ramos or Soler and Bailey, however you want to put it together. That's a good 3-man group to keep in mind. Then you get Tyler Fitzgerald, Brett Wisely at the bottom of the lineup. Fitzgerald's been decent over 96 chances. Pretty solid slash line, creating runs, driving in runs, and hitting for a little bit of power with a 253 ISO, 5 home runs and 7 steals, despite not making killer contact exactly. And then Brett Wisely's cheap in the infield as well. 272, 305, 405, creating runs 2% better than average. Mix and match type infielder. On the Dodgers, your primo bats are obviously 1 through 4. 4 superstars up at the top there, or 3.5 superstars. I'll knock Teoscar down a peg compared to Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani. But it's an excellent top 4. They're very, very expensive. You can see Ohtani just under the magic number at 9.19 in the home run model, but everybody else kind of scuffling for power. Ohtani's got 30 long balls and 23 stolen bases, a 185 WRC plus, a 320 ISO. Will Smith for 56.35, a good catcher investment, hitting second today, 15 home runs, a 344 on base, creating runs 29% better than average. Great ability to drive the ball. Everybody in the top part of this lineup is in the double digits for barrels, above 40% hard hits as well. That includes Andy Paez in the 5 spot. Freddie down to 290, 394, 499, continuing to have a very strong season though. 209 ISO, 151 WRC plus, Teoscar has 21 home runs to sit second on this version of the lineup, 223 ISO, a 131 WRC plus, and just again, another guy who's just absolutely mashing when he makes contact with the ball. A little bit high strikeout, not the greatest walk rate in the world, but crushes, and 5,000, 3,300 is comparably not all that expensive. Andy Pajas for 4,000, 2,700, 8 home runs on the season and 330 opportunities, down to a 142 ISO and a 98 WRC plus. Hasn't been all that consistent, but can absolutely mash when he connects. Gavin Lux, mix and match Miguel Rojas, mix and match quality. Rojas has been better than Lux, better than Hayward, and better than Chris Taylor this year. That's not saying very much. I think any one of these 4 guys is fine to include to help lower the price or fill out a stack. You're not getting a ton of quality out of any one of these guys. Between them, Rojas has a 105 WRC plus, and then Jason Hayward is probably my favorite option, over 142 plate appearances. Yeah, he's at 203, 296 on the front end, but he's hit 5 home runs in just a small sample. Still has a 211 ISO, still has a 44.2% hard hit rate, and came off a nice bounce back season last year. Chris Taylor's having the worst year of his career. So this amounts to, I guess I still got to put the Dodgers on top, but it's Dodgers bats, Giants bats, pretty close. Neither one of these pitchers is on the board for me with a lot of other value spots. And that's it, gang. 6-10. Do this one last time real quick over here. Once again, the guys in yellow are the opener-follower situation. I don't want either of those guys despite low prices. Nick Martinez is going to come down. Ignore him at those low prices. I don't think we're getting enough innings to support even those projections. He'll float more into like this territory. At the top of the board, Chris Sale against the high strikeout Reds team. The obvious and easy pitching play of the day. He's going to be super popular on both sides despite very high prices. Tremendous opportunity to succeed with a thin path toward failure. You do have a lot of other good high-priced options on the board, though. Zach Wheeler, Logan Gilbert are both tremendous. Either one of those guys, neither's a mistake. Neither's a mistake if you put them in instead of Chris Sale in one lineup. Neither is a bad idea. Between the two, Gilbert's got the better matchup. They're very close in terms of their talent, in terms of their individual upside. Wheeler's striking out a few more hitters so far this season, but he's got the worst matchup between the two. Garrett Crochet is fantastic, might be the best out of those 3 pitchers, but we're really questioning 3 to 5 innings. Don't know what the ceiling looks like. I think the median score there is in play, but I don't think there's any kind of comparable ceiling to the guys priced above him. So I think you're kind of ignoring Garrett Crochet and all of his quality on this slate. Jose Soriano, tremendous option from the value bin. John Gray, a very playable option for a cheaper price against a even more gettable lineup than the Mariners facing the White Sox. Both of those guys are going to be popular for value. Both of them make sense for value. Both of them, maybe you can mix and match your way through and pivot around and get to, shares of Simeon Woods Richardson for 62, drawing down against a very, very good Phillies lineup in a worse spot, but with no popularity and a lower price tag. Maybe you mix a little bit of that in, but by and large, you're playing these two value guys. So again, just be aware of what you're pairing them with because you're going to get onto some very common construction paths. Luis Hill, low faith for 9,800, 9,000. I think he's playable, but I don't love it against a pretty good Mets lineup. Jose Berrios, pretty mediocre option against Tampa Bay, and we're seeing a little bit of quality out of the Tampa Bay side of that as a value stack. So kind of an artificially short pitching slate with everybody checking in like here up. You get to land a knack already right here in a mediocre projection, 7,600, 8,000 with all that home run upside that we're seeing for the Giants. I don't love playing that. I don't love Colin Ray against the Cubs. He's usually a pitcher that I target with bats. I don't love where Jameson Taillon is priced on the other side of that game against a very good Brewers lineup for 92.83. That's really tough to justify. It helps put the Woods Richardson play on the board for just 62, honestly. Despite facing Philadelphia, there's just value baked into that price, and he's not far off of any of these other guys. And even in terms of the challenge that he's going to be facing, I don't know that he's all that far off, and he's higher quality than some of these guys. So that's in play. Less so on FanDuel, but I think he's in the mix at least at 82 for where you get Soriano at 81. There's a big gap there projection-wise on that side, though. Jake Bloss against Oakland, considering that Landon Knack is like all the way up there, that becomes maybe a little bit more playable based on the matchup. But again, pretty low quality option. I'm not all that convinced that there's much major league level talent there. We'll see, but I'm more inclined to grab some Oakland bats against. I'm very much going to the Diamondbacks against Alec Marsh, so I'm not going there. Dodgers against Jordan Hicks, I'm really not in love with that opportunity. Criswell at Coors Field for very cheap. Maybe you could get away with it on DK for 58. 68 on FanDuel feels a little thin. Quintana, oddly, if he was correctly priced, this would be a much more interesting value bin option. He's just not. He's a little bit more expensive than these other guys. But I do think probably that renders him under-owned. So maybe you get a low-owned shot at your 6-7 odd innings of clean baseball against a greatly diminished version of the Yankees. Odds are it doesn't work out. Yanks are projected or implied at just under 5 runs. But I think there's enough quality, at least for innings there. It's just a bad price on both sides. Montgomery's given you nothing so far this season at those prices. Was never a good DFS pitcher. Now he's been bad all year. So do you really want to go there against a pretty good Royals team? Opener-follower situation. Pitching against the Astros and not that good. Pitching at Coors Field against the Red Sox and not at all good. It's a really thin pitching slate now that we really have broken it down. It ends like here-ish. Like your quality / reliable options are all in that block. And then you've got only a very limited number of darts outside of that block that are at all showing any kind of upside. This is a hitting focused slate for sure. Adds credence to the idea of paying up, double spend at pitcher and find some value at bats. I will leave you guys with the home run board one last time. I believe it's still Elliot Ramos at the top. Yep. Rafi Devers. You can see some of my Arizona guys in here. Lou Bob creeping up for the White Sox. Aaron Judge. Can't suppress him all that much. Not that you'd want to. Some of the Giants definitely involved here. There's 2 of them right there. There's another one right there. Another couple down here. A couple of the Rockies shining through. Some Astros. Even some Rays. Some quality Rays bats. Don't want to ignore them since we talked about them so much. It's a really fun looking slate. I kind of like the shape of this one. I love slates that are, ugly pitching boards with some high end viable options and then just a lot of just meh through the middle and down toward the bottom. It's going to be fun. Jared Wade saying Rays faced the Cubs twice this season and he's been good in both games. That's not overly predictive. I think it's just, that's the nature of Colin Ray. He can snap off a decent start every now and again. Those games were 5 1/3 back on the 28th of June. He struck out 8, gave up 2 earned, gave up a homer, 2 walks, 3 hits, 2 earned runs. And then 5 1/3, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, gave up a home run, 1 earned run on 5 hits. So no quality start in either game, but pitched into the 6th inning. Gave you okay strikeout output and limited run creation, limited hits. Took the win bonus home in one of those 2 starts. That's the nature of Colin Ray. Those are his good starts. It's a little bit of happenstance that they both happen to come against the Cubs. He had, right before that, one of those 2 games against the Cubs, he had a good start at Fenway. By comparison, 2 strikeouts, 3 walks, but only 2 earned runs on 3 hits. So the good ones come and go. That's who he is. I tend to target him more with bats. But, on a slate like this, he's in the mix for some shares where he's priced. He was one of the guys that I was saying was a, viable option out of the semi-bargain bin today. If I'm dipping down away from these guys, I might take additional savings and go there and just draw against Philly. It's a worse matchup for sure, but it's a comparable pitching talent. There's a lot of ways to go. That's why I think slates like this are interesting because you're suddenly deciding between a lot of, just mediocre pitchers in, rough to bad spots, but at good prices. So what bats do you buy with it and where do you get to? But it's a very interesting slate and it's going to start before we know it. So let me get the hell out of here and get these projections updated. You guys absolutely rock hanging out through all this time. If you haven't done it already, like button, subscribe bell, jump into Discord. There's a like somewhere in the chat. Hang out with us. Check everything. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. Check out acemind.io for sims and optimization needs. Promo code over there is rotoscouts, all in caps. 20% off your first month when you decide to subscribe. And that's about it, gang. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll see you tomorrow for more. Adios.